let me make sure the things are working. And then we will get right into it. Of course, as always, last time, forgot to do something with the audio. Several things with the audio. So, I want to make sure it's right this time. I hear the music. Okay, that should be good. All right, let us do the thing. I am so excited. We get our fiction for the week. For the love. I keep thinking I'm going to be able to start reading my own fiction on my own time, but no, it is not to be. I have to keep reading handbooks, which I'm okay with, but good Lord, I need fiction in my life. So, more cocaine and mysteries. Just mysteries so far. We'll see. I mean, well, hang on. Hello, by the way. How's it going? As always, I don't know how to do this. What is happening? I have to clean out, like, the sources in OBS. Or at least organize them. Hello! Echo. Hi. How's it going? I am incredibly tired as well, so you're gonna get a lot of that this evening, apparently. I'm sorry. Also, not sorry. Good evening. How's it going? Long time no see. I hope things are well. I hope that was a good evening. I feel like I stressed the wrong syllable. Good evening. Yeah. 5.5 out of 10. Self-rate. Yes. So speaking of cocaine, the Gloria Scott, I assume, is going to be a ship. So cocaine could be in our future. You've been messing with reshade lately because there's a shader pack that simulates cameras, using it to keep your photography skills sharp since there's nothing to shoot down here. There's nothing to shoot down there. That's because you think there's nothing to shoot down there. You can find it. I believe in you. So what is reshade? What does reshade do? I will let you type it out. Yes, we are back with the Sherlock Holmes Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. Last week we had our first two, and now we're moving on to our next two. Hopefully I didn't check the chapter lengths, so I hope that it's not going to be long. I think they're going to be fine. But yes, so for this one we have the Gloria Scott. No, there's nothing to shoot down here, and you can tell from experience because you did photography in Eastern South Dakota. All right, fine. Sounds like a defeated mindset. I think. Well, I don't know. I don't know anymore. But for reshade, it's a shader injector you can use to inject new effects into video. Ooh. You can use it to add modern Oh, okay. I was gonna say like existing games, modern graphics to old games, or new features that normally aren't there. Ooh, interesting. Like the original Star Wars movies, and then they were updated with new CGI, like that, but better. Cool. Okay. Well, very nice. I assume that's going well then. And is that... So can you can play the games like that? Can do it like that, but you suggest making more tasteful edits. Okay, sounds good. Tasteful is good. In so many scenarios. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, very cool. I hope that is. I hope that's at least scratching that photography itch. And I hope at some point you can find something that is worth photographing. Does that tick you off? Sorry. You fell. No, you fell on a slick pool deck, sprained both of your MCLs, strained your right hip flexor when you did your most inglorious split in the process. Then you got home, and the 7th cylinder in your truck's engine destroyed itself. Oh my god! $13,000 later, you left having her back and absolutely babying her while you break in the new engine. Helped you count your blessings for sure. Oh my gosh! I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad that's over with now. I'm sorry you had to go through all of it. But yes, counting the blessings. Oh my goodness. Oh. Yeah, and good to see you in yes, better in better times than that. Oh. It is real time. You use it to sharpen color correct, add chromatic aberration in okay, hang on. Use it to sharpen, color correct, and add chromatic aberration in real time. When you pause for a photo, you simulate, oh, depth of field too. Oh, okay. I understood most of those words, not all of them, how they fit together. But very cool. Okay. You made it back from California. Okay, wait. Weren't you on YouTube? Okay, you made it back from California. 152 from Virginia to California took 5 days and 35 hours. So how was it? That sounds awesome. And how did you get into that? Did you like through people you know, or did somebody just contact you, or what? And yes, agreed, Sogan. It was a little distracting, to put it lightly. My goodness. Yes, just a little. Oh, we're doing that. Yes, also agreed with that. So it's all good now, though, I hope. Oh, okay. I hope. I do. Really cool. Right, but it was the most cramped and uncomfortable plane ever. Oh, no. I mean, we do what we must, though. We do what we must. It is. It's so much better being in the worst, most cramped box, flying around for 35 hours than anything else, I would say. But you had a follow-up appointment today, and you're starting physical therapy next week. Improving, thanks. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. I do, and I hope that goes well. And I would say make sure you do your physical therapy. I had to do physical therapy at one point, and I didn't do it right, and I think I messed myself up. So definitely do your physical therapy. But yes, that'll help. Flight school you work for. Oh, sold it to someone in Cali. Oh, okay. Did you airline back then? Or how did you do that? Suggest a stretching regimen once healed up. Yes, stretch the ligaments, prevent future injuries. Right, yeah. Did 11.1 hours on the 3rd day. Good lord. Okay. Clearly it went fine though. So wow, that's a bit. With how many stops then? Yes, ma'am. Okay, yes, sounds good. I did. I should have done better, and yeah, I will do better. I'm working on doing better. So tendons, one of those. Yes, exactly. You were on the red eye last night. Okay. Got home by 12 today. Nice. Excellent. Oh, well, I am. I'm glad that went well. No issues or anything, and just excellent adventuring. Awesome. Oh, very, very fun. Okay. All right. We shall get into it. The Gloria Scott. And again, I do believe that is a ship because it is in quotes, and that's how you tell. Because I read books and I know things. That's what I do. I read books and know things, kind of. Wouldn't say no issues. Okay. Like what? I would like to hear. While you're typing, we shall begin. So, the Gloria Scott. I have some papers here, said my friend Sherlock Holmes, as we sat one winter's night on either side of the fire, which I really think, Watson, that it would be worth your while to glance over. These are the documents in the extraordinary case of the Gloria Scott, and this is the message which struck Justice of the Peace Trevor dead with horror when he read it. He had picked from a drawer a little tarnished cylinder, and undoing the tape, he handed me a short note scrawled upon a half sheet of slate gray paper. Of slate gray paper. Slate gray paper? I'm not sure how that hyphen goes. The supply of game for London is going steadily up, it ran. Headkeeper Hudson, we believe, had been now told to receive all orders for fly paper and for preservation of your hen pheasant's life. As I glanced up from reading this enigmatical message, I saw Holmes chuckling at the expression upon my face. "You look a little bewildered," said he. "I cannot see how such a message as this could inspire horror. It seems to me to be rather grotesque than otherwise." "Very likely. Yet the fact remains that the reader, who was a fine, robust old man, was knocked clean down by it as if it had been the butt end of a pistol." "You arouse my curiosity," said I. "But why did you say just now that there were very particular reasons why I should study this case?" "Because it was the first in which I was ever engaged." I had often endeavored to elicit from my companion what had first turned his mind in the direction of criminal research, but had never caught him before in a communicative humor. Now he sat forward in his armchair, and spread out the documents upon his knees. Then he lit his pipe and sat for some time smoking and turning them over. Hello, how is it going? I hope you're well. It is good to see you. Yay! We're just starting the Gloria Scott. And there was an enigmatical message, and it's apparently the first story, case that Sherlock has ever done. Good, excellent. I am well. I was supposed to go flying since Tuesday and was not able to. That's a story for the end. So yes, but working on stuff and busy and somewhat sleepy. So it's going to be interesting this evening. But yes, I am. I'm glad you're well. We are placing bets when the cocaine gets involved. How do I do that? There should be a way. There should be like a little thing. Command bet. But yes, I am. I'm sure it's going to come up, especially now that you've said it. You never heard me talk of Victor Trevor, he asked. He was the only friend I made during the 2 years I was at college. I was never a very sociable fellow, Watson, always rather fond of moping in my rooms and working out my own little methods of thought, so that I never mixed much with the men of my year. Bar fencing and boxing, I had few athletic tastes, and then my line of study was quite distinct from that of the other fellows, so that we had no points of contact at all. Trevor was the only man I knew, and that only through the accident of his bull terrier freezing onto my ankle one morning as I went down to chapel. You say at about a third into it? A third into the night or a third into the story? Because that is a distinction. You'll probably go flying this weekend now that your car is fixed? Yes! Nice. Excellent. Just tootling around, or do you have places to go specifically? Nice. Oh, I'm glad. All right. I'm ready for this. First day, headed to Tennessee. After your first stop in North Carolina, headed out over the mountains. Okay, 150. 150 or 152? $152. Yes. On your way into Tennessee, realized you should be getting low on fuel. Then A2C proceeds to give you vectors for traffic. Finally, you get it straight in for the runway and land. Go to check the fuel and see one of your caps are missing. You then dip the tanks and measure 2.5 gallons total, and you expected a 5-gallon reserve. Then had to scour the state to find a fuel cap that you spent $100 on. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure that wasn't fun to deal with at the time, but it is a great story. A third into the story. Okay, all right, sounds good. We'll have to check. As soon as the cocaine comes, we got to mark that spot, and then we'll have to divide the pages. The engine began running rough at one point on final and expected to end up in a field. So you didn't, okay. Did you find out why it did? Carb ice, question mark? Probably just fly around. Rarely do you have a destination. Fair. It's hard because sometimes it's like, I love just being up there, but at the same time, it almost feels like, I don't know, I can't justify it. At least like the rental cost. Since you have your own plane, it's probably a bit easier. But like I always feel like I need a destination. But yet we don't. You know what I mean? It's so freeing, but yet I don't know what it is. But that'll be fun. Think it was sorry, I bit my lip. Think it was sucking in air with the open. Oh, fuel tank and low fuel levels. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, that sounds frightening. Okay. Need to put more hours into the sim again. Your skills are degrading. Just so tired lately. Fair. I hope it's going well though. But yes, I hope you get to fly soon as well. That'll be good. Definitely. The open tank had barely any fuel at all. I feel that checks out. Oh no. Oh, like, yes, that is. Listening to it now, it's like, oh yeah, great story. But like actually imagining it happening sounds very frightening. But I'm glad that it went well. Like, yeah, better than it could have. So yes, good. Oh, excellent. I feel like the rest of the flight, the caps were triple, quadruple checked. I would think so. Okay. Oh shoot, what was his name? Victor Trevor. Gosh darn it. Ah! Sorry, my mouse is... Oh, there we go. Okay. So the bull terrier, freezing onto the ankle. It was a prosaic way of forming a friendship, but it was effective. I was laid by the heels for 10 days, but Trevor used to come in to inquire after me. At first, it was only a minute's chat, but soon his visits lengthened, and before the end of the term, we were close friends. He was a hearty, full-blooded fellow, full of spirits and energy, the very opposite to me in most respects, but we had some subjects in common, and it was a bond of union when I found that he was as friendless as I, apart from the bull terrier. Finally, he invited me down to his father's place at Donathorpe in Norfolk, and I accepted his hospitality for a month of the long vacation. Going over to people's places for a month seems different. Old Trevor was evidently a man of some wealth and consideration, a JP, and a landed proprietor. Donathorpe is a little hamlet just to the north of Langmere, in the country of the Broads. The house was an old... Every time. The house was an old-fashioned, widespread, oak-beamed brick building with a fine, lime-lined avenue leading up to it. There was excellent wild duck shooting in the fens, remarkably good fishing, a small but select library, taken over, as I understood, from a former occupant, and a tolerable cook, so that he would be a fastidious man who could not put in a pleasant month there. Trevor Sr. was a widower, and my friend his only son. When you measured the tanks, your buddy and you looked at each other with wide eyes, I can imagine. Oh. Just a big ol' oopsies. Oh my gosh. One nice thing about owning is having the freedom to go whenever and no time constraints. Right, exactly. So that'll be good. Are you gonna like practice any maneuvers at all, or it's just gonna be just doing the things? I get stuck in like study and practice brain, and I really need to do just like some fun stuff. So I hope it is. I hope it's just gonna be fun when you go. It is not. No, your team is on the verge of mutiny. Why? On the plus side, impress your supervisor because you taught an old lady how to use Google Images to identify her security equipment. Oh, very nice. Good on you. Sorry about the rest. Oh no. Hello. How's it going? Hope you're well. The things. Oh yes, all of the things, and then some more of the things. You know, all depends. If you have a passenger, it will probably be $100 hamburger. Nice. Somewhere you've been before, or are you going to try somewhere new? Excellent. Yeah, that'll be fun. Okay, there had been a daughter, I heard, but she had died of diphtheria. Diphtheria, or is it diphtheria? I don't know. Diphtheria while on a visit to Birmingham. The father interested me extremely. He was a man of little culture, but with a considerable amount of rude strength, both physically and mentally. He knew hardly any books, but he had traveled far, had seen much of the world, and had remembered all that he had learned. In person, he was a thick-set, burly man with a shock of grizzled hair, a brown, weather-beaten face, and blue eyes which were keen to the verge of fierceness. Yet he had a reputation for kindness and charity on the countryside, and was noted for the leniency of his sentences from the bench. One evening, shortly after my arrival, we were sitting over a glass of port after dinner, when young Trevor began to talk about those habits of observation and inference which I had already formed into a system, although I had not yet appreciated the part which they were to play in my life. The old man evidently thought that his son was exaggerating in his description of one or two trivial feats which I had performed. Trivial feats. Sorry. Preferably somewhere new. Nice. Have you looked up any places yet? Or you still gotta do the planning? She died of... I'm sorry. Yes, exactly. It's hard sometimes. You get a little tongue twisted. I don't practice my tongue twisters as much as I used to. So things, I trip over my tongue, and I'm sorry. It's a very sad thing. It's not supposed to be humorous. There are a couple places on your list. Nice. So you'll just be able to check one of them out. Excellent. Yay. That'll be fun. Crossing my fingers that it all works out. Yay. Okay. Come now, Mr. Holmes, said he, laughing good-humoredly. I'm an excellent subject, if you can deduce anything from me. I fear there is not very much, I answered. I feel like that's kind of throwing shade. I might suggest that you have gone about in fear of some personal attack with the last 12 months. Oh, yeah, just come out with that one. The laugh faded from his lips, and he stared at me in great surprise. Well, that's true enough, said he. You know, Victor, turning to his son, when we broke up that poaching gang, they swore to knife us, and Sir Edward Hawley has actually been attacked. I've always been on my guard since then, though I have no idea how you know it. You have a very handsome stick, I answered. By the inscription, I observed that you had not had it more than a year, but you have taken some pains to bore the head of it and pour melted lead into the hole so as to make it a formidable weapon. I argued that you would not take such precautions unless you had some danger to fear. Anything else? He asked, smiling. You have boxed a good deal in your youth. Right again. How did you know it? Is my nose knocked a little out of the straight? No, said I. It is your ears. Oh, no. They have the peculiar flattening and thickening which marks the boxing man. Anything else? You have done a good deal of digging by your callosities. Callosities? That's a good word. Made all my money at the gold fields. You have been in New Zealand? Right again. You have visited Japan. Quite true. And you have been most intimately associated with someone whose initials were J.A. and whom you afterwards were eager to entirely forget. Mr. Trevor stood slowly up, fixed his large blue eyes upon me with a strange, wild stare, and then pitched forward with his face among the nutshells which strewed the cloth, in a dead faint. Well then. One airport on your list is out of state. Ooh, that one would be fun. Do it. That would be cool. I'm curious what new people would think stumbling, oh God, across Heidi, reading Sherlock Holmes while a bunch of airplane nerds hang out and chat. I know. It's so fun. And that's why I appreciate you guys letting me do this. Because I know most of you came for the plays. But yeah, it's a fun time. I do. I enjoy it. I enjoy you airplane nerds. Because I am one of you. I just also like murder mysteries as well, I guess. Makes sense to us because you know each other, but remove the context, probably be super confused and the idea tickles you. I like it. I like it a lot. Yes. Oh, that's good. You can imagine, Watson, how shocked both his son and I were. His attack did not last long, however, for when we undid his collar and sprinkled the water from one of the finger glasses over his face, he gave a gasp or two and sat up. Ah, boys, said he, forcing a smile. I hope I haven't frightened you. Strong as I look, there is a weak place in my heart, and it does not take much to knock me over. I don't know how you manage this, Mr. Holmes, but it seems to me that all the detectives of fact and of fancy would be children in your hands. That's your line of life, sir, and you may take the word of a man who has seen something of the world. And that recommendation, with the exaggerated estimate of my ability with which he prefaced it, was, if you will believe me, Watson, the very first thing which ever made me feel that a profession might be made out of what had up to that time been the merest hobby. At the moment, however, I was too much concerned at the sudden illness of my host to think of anything else. I hope that I have said nothing to pain you, said I. Well, you certainly touched upon rather a tender point. Might I ask how you know, and how much you know? He spoke now in a half-jesting fashion, but a look of terror still lurked at the back of his eyes. Such a good, what's the thing? Description. That's a word. You're a dumb airplane nerd. We're all dumb airplane nerds. If you are a dumb airplane nerd, we're all dumb airplane nerds. I like it, yes. But what does that mean? It is simplicity itself, said I. When you bared your arm to draw that fish into the boat, I saw that J.A. had been tattooed in the bend of the elbow. The letters were still legible, but it was perfectly clear from their blurred appearance and from the staining of the skin round them that efforts had been made to obliterate them. It was obvious, then, that those initials had once been very familiar to you, and that you had afterwards wished to forget. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry. It was obvious, then, that those initials had once been very familiar to you, and that you had afterwards wished to forget them. What an eye you have, he cried with a sigh of relief. It is just as you say, but we won't talk of it. Of all ghosts, the ghosts of our old lovers are the worst. Come into the billiard room and have a quiet cigar. Noom. From that day, amid all his cordiality, there was always a touch of suspicion in Mr. Trevor's manner towards me. Oops. Even his son remarked it. You've given the governor such a turn, said he, that he'll never be sure again of what you know and what you don't know. He did not mean to show it, I am sure, but it was so strongly in his mind that it peeped out at every action. At last I became so convinced that I was causing him uneasiness that I drew my visit to a close. On the very day, however, before I left, an incident occurred which proved in the sequel to be of importance. We were sitting out upon the lawn on garden chairs, the three of us, basking in the sun and admiring the view across the Broads, when a maid came out to say that there was a man at the door who wanted to see Mr. Trevor. What is his name? Asked my host. He would not give any. What does he want, then? He says that you know him, and that he only wants a moment's conversation. Show him round here. An instant afterwards, there appeared a little wizened fellow. Is it wizened or wizened? I remember always reading it, and then never actually, the thing. I think it's wizened, but it's not. Come on. Wizened. It is wizened. Okay, I always said it wizened. We have been enlightened. I was going to say enwizened, but I don't think that's correct. Anyway, show him round here. An instant afterwards, there appeared a little wizened fellow with a cringing manner and a shambling style of walking. He wore an open jacket with a splotch of tar on the sleeve, a red and black check shirt, dungaree trousers, and heavy boots badly worn. His face was thin and brown and crafty, with a perpetual smile upon it, which showed an irregular line of yellow teeth, and his crinkled hands were half closed in a way that is distinctive of sailors. As he came slouching across the lawn, I heard Mr. Trevor make a sort of hiccuping noise in his throat, and jumping out of his chair, he ran into the house. He was back in a moment, and I smelt a strong reek of brandy as he passed me. Well, my man, said he, what can I do for you? The sailor stood looking at him with puckered eyes and with the same loose-lipped smile upon his face. You don't know me? He asked. Why, dear me, it is surely Hudson, said Mr. Trevor in a tone of surprise. Hudson it is, sir, said the seaman. Why, it's 30 year and more since I saw you last. Here you are in your house, and me still picking my salt meat out of the harness cask. Tut, you will find that I have not forgotten old times, cried Mr. Trevor, and, walking towards the sailor, He said something in a low voice. Go into the kitchen, he continued out loud. Oh, he said something in a low voice. Go into the kitchen, he continued out loud, and you will get food and drink. I have no doubt that I shall find you a situation. Thank you, sir, said the seaman, touching his forelock. I'm just off a 2-year in an 8-knot tramp, short-handed at that, and I wants a rest. I thought I'd get it either with Mr. Beddoes or with you. Ah, cried Trevor, you know where Mr. Beddoes is. Bless you, sir, I know where all my old friends are, said the fellow with a sinister smile, and he slouched off after the maid to the kitchen. Mr. Trevor mumbled something to us about having been shipmate with the man when he was going back to the diggings, and then, leaving us on the lawn, he went indoors. An hour later, when we entered the house, we found him stretched dead drunk upon the dining room sofa. The whole incident left a most ugly impression upon my mind, and I was not sorry next day to leave Donathorpe behind me, for I felt that my presence must be a source of embarrassment to my friend. All this occurred during the first month of the long vacation. I went up to my London rooms, where I spent 7 weeks working out a few experiments in organic chemistry. One day, however, when the autumn was far advanced and the vacation drawing to a close, I received a telegram from my friend imploring me to return to Donathorpe and saying that he was in great need of my advice and assistance. Of course, I dropped everything and set out for the north once more. He met me with the dog cart at the station, and I saw at a glance that the last 2 months had been very trying ones for him. He had grown thin and careworn, and had lost the loud, cheery manner for which he had been remarkable. The governor is dying, were the first words he said. Impossible, I cried. What is the matter? Apoplexy, nervous shock. He's been on the verge all day. I doubt if we shall find him alive. I was, as you may think, Watson, horrified at this unexpected news. What has caused it? I asked. Ah, that is the point. Jump in and we can talk it over while we drive. You remember that fellow who came upon the evening before you left us? Perfectly. Do you know who it was that we let into the house that day? I have no idea. It was the devil, Holmes, he cried. I stared at him in astonishment. Yes, it was the devil himself. We have not had a peaceful hour since, not one. The governor has never held up his head from that evening, and now the life has been crushed out of him, and his heart broken, all through this accursed Hudson. What power had he then? Ah, that is what I would give so much to know. The kindly, charitable, good old governor. How could he have fallen into the clutches of such a ruffian? But I am so glad that you have come, Holmes. I trust very much to your judgment and discretion, and I know that you will advise me for the best. All right, here we go. What did he do? We were dashing along the smooth, white country road, with the long stretch of the Broads in front of us glimmering in the red light of the setting sun. From a grove upon our left, I could already see the high chimneys and the flagstaff which marked the squire's dwelling. My father made the fellow gardener, said my companion, and then, as that did not satisfy him, he was promoted to be butler. The house seemed to be at his mercy, and he wandered about and did what he chose in it. The maids complained of his drunken habits and his vile language. The dad raised their wages all round to recompense them for the annoyance. The fellow would take the boat and my father's best gun, and treat himself to little shooting trips. And all this with such a sneering, leering, insolent face that I would have knocked him down 20 times over if he had been a man of my own age. I tell you, Holmes, I have had to keep a tight hold upon myself all this time, and now I am asking myself whether, if I had let myself go a little more, I might not have been a wiser man. Well, matters went from bad to worse with us, and this animal Hudson became more and more intrusive, until at last, on making some insolent reply to my father in my presence one day, I took him by the shoulders and turned him out of the room. He slunk away with a livid face and 2 venomous eyes which uttered more threats than his tongue could do. I don't know what passed between the poor dad and him after that, but the dad came to me next day and asked me whether I would mind apologizing to Hudson. I refused, as you can imagine, and asked my father how he could allow such a wretch to take such liberties with himself and his household. Ah, my boy, said he, it is all very well to talk, but you don't know how I am placed. But you shall know, Victor. I'll see that you shall know, come what may. You wouldn't believe harm of your poor old father, would you, lad?" He was very much moved, and shut himself up in the study all day, where I could see through the window that he was writing busily. That evening there came what seemed to me to be a grand release, for Hudson told us that he was going to leave us. He walked into the dining room as we sat after dinner, and announced his intention in the thick voice of a half-drunken man. "I've had enough of Norfolk," said he. "I'll run down to Mr. Beddoes in Hampshire. He'll be as glad to see me as you were, I dare say." "You're not going away in any kind of spirit, Hudson, I hope," said my father, with a tameness which made my blood boil. "I've not had my apology," said he sulkily, glancing in my direction. "Victor, you will acknowledge that you have used this worthy fellow rather roughly," said the dad, turning to me. "On the contrary, I think that we have both shown extraordinary patience towards him," I answered. "Oh, you do you?" he snarls. "Very good, mate. We'll see about that." He slouched out of the room, and half an hour afterwards left the house, leaving my father in a state of pitiable nervousness. Night after night I heard him pacing his room, and it was just as he was recovering his confidence that the blow did at last fall. "And how?" I asked eagerly. "In a most extraordinary fashion. A letter arrived from my father yesterday evening, bearing the Fordingbridge postmark." My father read it, clapped both his hands to his head, and began running round the room in little circles, like a man who has been driven out of his senses. When I at last drew him down onto the sofa, his mouth and eyelids were all puckered on one side, and I saw that he had a stroke. Dr. Fordham came over at once. We put him to bed, but the paralysis has spread. He has shown no sign of returning consciousness, and I think that we shall hardly find him alive." "You horrify me, Trevor," I cried. "What then could have been in this letter to cause so dreadful a result?" "Nothing. There lies the inexplicable part of it. The message was absurd and trivial. Ah, my God, it is as I feared." As he spoke, we came round the curve of the avenue, and saw in the fading light that every blind in the house had been drawn down. As we dashed up to the door, my friend's face convulsed with grief. A gentleman in black emerged from it. "When did it happen, doctor?" asked Trevor. "Almost immediately after you left." "Did he recover consciousness?" "For an instant before the end." "Any message for me?" "Only that the papers were in the back drawer of the Japanese cabinet." My friend ascended with the doctor to the chamber of death, while I remained in the study, turning the whole matter over and over in my head, and feeling as somber as ever I had done in my life. What was the past of this Trevor, pugilist, traveler, and gold digger? That's a little different now. And how had he placed himself in the power of this acid-faced seaman? Why, too, should he faint at an allusion to the half-effaced initials upon his arm, and die of fright when he had a letter from Fordingham? Then I remembered that Fordingham was in Hampshire, and that this Mr. Beddoes, whom the seaman had gone to visit, and presumably to blackmail, had also been mentioned as living in Hampshire. The letter, then, might either come from Hudson, the seaman, saying that he had betrayed the guilty secret which appeared to exist, or it might come from Beddoes, warning an old confederate that such a betrayal was imminent. So far it seemed clear enough. But then, how could this letter be trivial and grotesque as described by the son? He must have misread it. If so, it must have been one of those ingenious secret codes which mean one thing while they seem to mean another. I must see this letter. If there were a hidden meaning in it, I was confident that I could pluck it forth. For an hour I sat pondering over it in the gloom, until at last a weeping maid brought in a lamp, and close at her heels came my friend Trevor, pale but composed, with these very papers which lie upon my knee held in his grasp. He sat down opposite to me, drew the lamp to the edge of the table, and handed me a short note scribbled, as you see, upon a single sheet of gray paper. Okay, so it is gray paper. "The supply of game for London is going steadily up," it ran. "Headkeeper Hudson, we believe, has been now told to receive all orders for fly paper and for preservation of your hen pheasant's life." So Hudson. I dare say my face looked as bewildered as yours did just now, when first I read this message. Then I reread it very carefully. It was evidently as I had thought, and some secret meaning must lie buried in this strange combination of words. Or could it be that there was a prearranged significance to such phrases as fly paper and hen pheasant? Such a meaning would be arbitrary and could not be deduced in any way. And yet I was loath to believe that this was the case, and the presence of the word Hudson seemed to show that the subject of the message was as I had guessed, and that it was from Beddoes rather than the sailor. I tried it backwards, but the combination life pheasant's hen was not encouraging. Then I tried alternate words, but neither the of for nor supply game London promised to throw any light upon it. And then, in an instant, the key of the riddle was in my hands, and I saw that every third word, beginning with the first, would give a message which might well drive old Trevor to despair. It was short and terse. The warning, as I now read it to my companion: the game is up. Hudson has told all. Fly for your life. Ooh, okay. Victor Trevor sank his face into his shaking hands. It must be that, I suppose, said he. This is worse than death, for it means disgrace as well. But what is the meaning of these head keepers and hen pheasants? It means nothing to the message, but it might mean a good deal to us if we had no other means of discovering the sender. You see that he has begun by writing, "The game is," and so on. Afterwards, he had to fulfill the prearranged cipher to fill in any 2 words in each space. He would naturally use the first words which came to his mind, and if there were so many which referred to sport among them, you may be tolerably sure that he is either an ardent shot or interested in breeding. Do you know anything of this, Beddoes? Why, now that you mention it, said he, I remember that my poor father used to have an invitation from him to shoot over his preserves every autumn. Then it is undoubtedly from him that the note comes, said I. It only remains for us to find out what the secret was which the sailor Hudson seems to have held over the heads of these 2 wealthy and respected men. Alas, Holmes, I fear that it is one of sin and shame, cried my friend. But from you I shall have no secrets. Here is the statement which was drawn up by my father when he knew that the danger from Hudson had become imminent. I found it in the Japanese cabinet, as he told the doctor. Take it and read it to me, for I have neither the strength nor the courage to do it myself. These are the very papers, Watson, which he handed to me, and I will read them to you, as I read them in the old study that night to him. They are endorsed outside, as you see, some particulars of the voyage of the bark Gloria Scott, from her leaving Falmouth, we'll go with that, on the 8th October, 1855, to her destruction in north latitude 15 degrees 20 minutes, right? West longitude 25 degrees 14 minutes, on November 6th. It is in the form of a letter and runs in this way. My dear, dear son, now that approaching disgrace begins to darken the closing years of my life, I can write with all truth and honesty that it is not the terror of the law, it is not the loss of my position in the country, nor is it my fall in the eyes of all who have known me, which cuts me to the heart, but it is the thought that you should come to blush for me, you who love me and who have seldom, I hope, had reason to do other than respect me. But if the blow falls, which is forever hanging over me, then I should wish you to read this, that you may know straight from me how far I have been to blame. On the other hand, if all should go well, which may kind God Almighty grant, then if by any chance this paper should be still undestroyed and should fall into your hands, I conjure you, by all you hold sacred, by the memory of your dear mother, and by the love which had been between us, to hurl it into the fire and to never give one thought to it again. If the blow falls, does that count? Does that count towards the bet? We'll say it does. We'll say it does just because I'm curious whether or not it works. Hang on, where was it? Was it here? Blow falls. Boom. Oops, shoot. We're gonna bookmark it. God dang it. Where's book? Oh, probably up here on this side. There we go. We got it bookmarked. We'll check it. Oh, when the blow. You've been waiting. All right. Hurl it into the fire. Never give one thought to it again. If then your eye goes on to read this line, blows, blow, line. I know that I shall already have been exposed and dragged from my home, or, as is more likely, for you know that my heart is weak, by lying with my tongue sealed forever in death. In either case, the time for suppression is past, and every word which I tell you is the naked truth, and this I swear as I hope for mercy. I feel like you've done more to corrupt than to do anything useful around here. I was gonna say that is useful, then I'm like, that doesn't sound right. You've done just as much usefulness as corrupting, which also, I guess, makes it sound bad because that's a lot of corrupting. It's fun. I enjoy it. My name, dear lad, is not Trevor. Okay. My name, dear lad, is not Trevor. I was James Armitage in my younger days, and you can understand now the shock that it was to me a few weeks ago when your college friend addressed me in words which seemed to imply that he had surprised. I feel like it's supposed to be surmised. Surprised my secret. Ah, J.A. Okay. As Armitage, it was that I entered a London banking house, and as Armitage, I was convicted of breaking my country's laws and was sentenced to transportation. Do not think very harshly of me, laddie. It was a debt of honor, so-called, which I had to pay, and I used money which was not my own to do it, in the certainty that I could replace it before there could be any possibility of its being missed. But the most dreadful ill luck pursued me. The money which I had reckoned upon never came to hand, and a premature examination of accounts exposed my deficit. The case might have been dealt leniently with, but the laws were more harshly administered 30 years ago than now, and on my 23rd birthday, I found myself chained as a felon with 37 other convicts in 'tween decks of the bark Gloria Scott, bound for Australia. It's useful that you corrupt. Makes you sound like a predator. No. There are two distinct things. You've just done as much of one as the other. But again, either that means you've done very little usefully or very much corruptedly, and that is, yeah. It is yeah, usefulness and corruption, and we'll leave it there enigmatically. Help, you're being attacked by a dog! Just like Sherlock Holmes was at the beginning of this, which led to the story. I assume in quite a lovely way, though, as well. Yes? How is Pepper? I hope well. Okay. It was the year 55 when the is it Crimean? I keep wanting to say Crimean War was at its height, and the old convict ships had been largely used as transports in the Black Sea. The government was compelled, therefore, to use smaller and less suitable vessels for sending out their prisoners. The Gloria Scott had been in the Chinese tea trade, but she was an old-fashioned, heavy-bowed, broad-beamed craft, and the new clippers had cut her out. She was a 500-ton boat, and besides her 38 jailbirds, she carried 26 of a crew, 18 soldiers, a captain, 3 mates, a doctor, a chaplain, and 4 warders. Nearly 100 souls were in her, all told, when we set sail from Falmouth. Man, how things have gone full circle. Yes. I love that. Yes, he's good. Literally just gave it. Yes. You as you asked that question. Oh, cute. Oh, yay. Oh, I love that. Hello, Pepper. You get him. Nicely and kindly. And affectionately. The partitions between the cells of the convicts, instead of being of thick oak, as is usual in convict ships, were quite thin and frail. The man next to me upon the aft side was one whom I had particularly noticed when we were led down the quay. He was a young man with a clear, hairless face, a long, thin nose, and rather nutcracker jaws. He carried his head very jauntily in the air, had a swaggering style of walking, and was, above all else, remarkable for his extraordinary height. I don't think any of our heads would have come up to his shoulder, and I am sure that he could not have measured less than 6.5 feet. It was strange among so many sad and weary faces to see one which was full of energy and resolution. The sight of it was to me like a fire in a snowstorm. I was glad then to find that he was my neighbor, and gladder still when, in the dead of the night, I heard a whisper close to my ear, and found that he had managed to cut an opening in the board which separated us. "Hello, chummy," said he. "What's your name, and what are you here for?" I answered him, and asked in turn who I was talking with. "I'm Jack Prendergast," said he, "and by God, you'll learn to bless my name before you've done with me." I remembered hearing of his case, for it was one which had made an immense sensation throughout the country some time before my own arrest. He was a man of good family and of great ability, but on incurably vicious habits, who had by an ingenious system of fraud obtained huge sums of money from the leading London merchants. "Ha ha! You remember my case," said he proudly. "Very well indeed. Then maybe you remember something queer about it?" "What was that, then?" "I'd had nearly $250,000, hadn't I?" "So it was said." "But none was recovered, eh?" "No." "Oops." "Well, where do you suppose the balance is?" he asked. "I have no idea," said I. "He's very affectionate, excellent, excellent. Nutcracker jaws. What? Yeah, so. I'm just gonna slide right past that. Does your Steve Harvey Vietnam flashback face come across my text? Yes, now it does. I love it. Debating on if you should sim or not. There's never any debate. You should sim, definitely. I hope it goes well. I hope you find a good place to go, to start from, and then to go. It'll be good. It'll be fun. Where do you suppose the balance is? No idea. Right between my finger and thumb, he cried. By God, I've got more pounds to my name than you've hairs on your head. And if you've money, my son, and know how to handle it and spread it, you can do anything. Now you don't think it likely that a man who could do anything is going to wear his breeches out sitting in the stinking hold of a rat-gutted, beetle-ridden, moldy old coffin of a China coaster. No, sir, such a man will look after himself and will look after his chums. You may lay to that. You hold on to him, and you may kiss the book that he'll haul you through. That was his style of talk, and at first I thought it meant nothing. But after a while, when he had tested me and sworn me in with all possible solemnity, he let me understand that there really was a plot to gain command of the vessel. Oh, a dozen of the prisoners had hatched it before they came aboard. Prendergast was the leader, and his money was the motive power. "I'd a partner," said he, "a rare good man, as true as a stock to a barrel. He's got the dibs, he has, and where do you think he is at this moment? Why, he's the chaplain of this ship, the chaplain, no less. He came aboard with a black coat and his papers right, and money enough in his box to buy the thing right up from keel to main truck. The crew are his, body and soul. He could buy 'em at so much a gross with a cash discount, and he did it before ever they signed on. He's got 2 of the warders and Maria, the second mate, and he'd get the captain himself if he thought him worth it." "What are we to do then?" I asked. "What do you think?" said he. "We'll make the coats of some of these We'll make the coats of some of these soldiers redder than ever the tailor did." "But they are armed," said I. "And so shall we be, my boy. There's a brace of pistols for every mother's son of us, and if we can't carry this ship, with the crew at our back, it's time we were all sent to a young Mrs. boarding school. You speak to your mate upon the left tonight and see if he is to be trusted." Am I still working on my CFI training? Yes, I am. It is going. It's getting slightly better as I'm getting past just like the first hurdle of getting into it. But yeah, it is. It's still different, and it's a lot. But yeah, working on it. Need to readjust the settings for the sim first. Okay, all right. So do that first, and then sim. There we go. Perfect. I did so, and found my other neighbor to be a young fellow in much the same position as myself, whose crime had been forgery. His name was Evans, but he afterwards changed it like myself, and he is now a rich and prosperous man in the south of England. He was ready enough to join the conspiracy as the only means of saving ourselves, and before we had crossed the bay, there were only 2 of the prisoners who were not in the secret. One of these was of weak mind, and we did not dare to trust him, and the other was suffering from jaundice and could not be of any use to us. From the beginning, there was really nothing to prevent us from taking possession of the ship. The crew were a set of ruffians, specially picked for the job. The sham chaplain came into our cells to exhort us, carrying a black bag, supposed to be full of tracts, and so often did he come that by the 3rd day we had each stowed away at the foot of our beds a file, a brace of pistols, a pound of powder, and 20 slugs. 2 of the warders were agents of Prendergast, and the second mate was his right-hand man. The captain, the 2 mates, 2 warders, Lieutenant Martin, his 18 soldiers, and the doctor were all that we had against us. Yet, safe as it was, we determined to neglect no precaution and to make our attack suddenly by night. It came, however, more quickly than we expected, and in this way. One evening, about the 3rd week after our start, the doctor had come down to see one of the prisoners who was ill, and putting his hand down on the bottom of his bunk, he felt the outline of the pistols. If he had been silent, he might have blown the whole thing, but he was a nervous little chap, so he gave a cry of surprise and turned so pale that the man knew what was up in an instant and seized him. He was gagged before he could give the alarm and tied down upon the bed. He had unlocked the door that led to the deck, and we were through it in a rush. The 2 sentries were shot down, and so was a corporal who came running to see what was the matter. There were 2 more soldiers at the door of the stateroom, and their muskets seemed not to be loaded, for they never fired upon us, and they were shot while trying to fix their bayonets. Then we rushed on into the captain's cabin, but as we pushed open the door, there was an explosion from within, and there he lay, with his brains smeared over the chart of the Atlantic, which was pinned upon the table, while the chaplain stood with a smoking pistol in his hand at his elbow. The 2 mates had both been seized by the crew, and the whole business seemed to be settled. The stateroom was next the cabin, and we flocked in there and flopped down on the settees, all speaking together, for we were just mad with the feeling that we were free once more. There were lockers all round, and Wilson, the sham chaplain, knocked one of them in and pulled out a dozen of brown sherry. We cracked off the necks of the bottles, poured the stuff out into tumblers, and were just tossing them off, when in an instant, without warning, there came the roar of muskets in our ears, and the saloon was so full of smoke that we could not see across the table. When it cleared again, the place was a shambles. Wilson and 8 others were wriggling on the top of each other on the floor, and the blood and the brown sherry on the table turned me sick now when I think of it. We were so cowed by the sight that I think we should have given the job up, if it had not been for Prendergast. He bellowed like a bull and rushed for the door, with all that were left alive at his heels. Out we ran, and there on the poop were the lieutenant and 10 of his men. The swing skylights above the saloon table had been a bit open, and they had fired on us through the slit. We got on them before they could load, and they stood to it like men, but we had the upper hand of them, and in 5 minutes it was all over. My God, was there ever a slaughterhouse like that ship? Prendergast was like a raging devil, and he picked the soldiers up as if they had been children and threw them overboard, alive or dead. There was one sergeant that was horribly wounded and yet kept on swimming for a surprising time, until someone in mercy blew out his brains. When the fighting was over, there was no one left of our enemies except just the warders, the mates, and the doctor. Wow, okay. Jeez. Want to hear your experience in Greenville on your trip? Yes. If you say Greenville isn't green during the story, you're going to be upset. Oh no. Get it soon and can do your biennial. Okay. I will try. When's your biennial? So my CFI was gunning for September, but it's already halfway through August, and I'm like, I feel not even close. So I'm not even comfortable soloing right seat yet. Kind of. We'll get to that. But that would be cool. It was very green, but it was quite an experience. Okay, sounds good. You have an entire story about Agent G. Agent G gives you Half-Life vibes? Okay, sounds good. You can send the story. Okay. I am going to read that. We're almost done with this one, so we'll quick finish this, and then I'm going to read that. Okay? Is that cool? Is that all right? Next month. Oh, gosh darn it. Okay, probably won't be then. Darn it. But we'll see. We'll see. I will. We'll finish this, and then I'm going to go through and read that. All right. I'm excited. I'm so interested. Okay. Oops. Oh, no. Oh, no. Gosh darn it. No. Sorry. God dang it. Sorry. Don't know how to use this freaking thing. Okay. God dang it. There for the love. It was over them that the great quarrel arose. There were many of us who were glad enough to win back our freedom, and yet who had no wish to have murder on our souls. It was one thing to knock the soldiers over with their muskets in their hands, and it was another to stand by while men were being killed in cold blood. 8 of us, 5 convicts and 3 sailors, said that we would not see it done. But there was no moving Isn't it Prendergast? Oh my god, have I been saying it wrong the whole time? Wasn't it Prendergast? Prendergast. Prender. God dang it. There was no moving Prendergast and those who were with him. Our only chance of safety lay in making a clean job of it, said he, and he would not leave a tongue with power to wag in a witness box. It nearly came to our sharing the fate of the prisoners, but at last he said that if we wished, we might take a boat and go. We jumped at the offer, for we were already sick of these bloodthirsty doings, and we saw that there would be worse before it was done. We were given a suit of sailor togs each, a barrel of water, 2 casks, one of junk and one of biscuits, and a compass. Prendergast threw us over a chart, told us that we were shipwrecked mariners whose ship had foundered in latitude 15 degrees and longitude 25 degrees west, and then cut the painter and let us go. And now I come to the most surprising part of my story, my dear son. The seamen had hauled the foreyard aback during the rising, but now as we left them, they brought it square again, and as there was a light wind from the north and east, the bark began to draw slowly away from us. Our boat lay, rising and falling, upon the long, smooth rollers, and Evans and I, who were the most educated of the party, were sitting in the sheets working out our position and planning what coast we should make for. It was a nice question, for the Cape de Verds were about 500 miles to the north of us, and the African coast about 700 to the east. On the whole, as the wind was coming round to the north, we thought that Sierra Leone might be best, and turned our head in that direction, the bark being at that time nearly hull down on our starboard quarter. Suddenly, as we looked at her, we saw a dense black cloud of smoke shoot up from her, which hung like a monstrous tree upon the skyline. A few seconds later, a roar like thunder burst upon our ears, and as the smoke thinned away, there was no sign left of the Gloria Scott. In an instant, we swept the boat's head round again and pulled with all our strength for the place where the haze still trailing over the water marked the scene of this catastrophe. It was a long hour before we reached it, and at first we feared that we had come too late to save anyone. A splintered boat and a number of crates and fragments of spars rising and falling on the waves showed us where the vessel had foundered, but there was no sign of life, and we had turned away in despair when we heard a cry for help, and saw at some distance a piece of wreckage with a man lying stretched across it. When we pulled him aboard the boat, he proved to be a young seaman of the name of Hudson, who was so burned and exhausted that he could give us no account of what had happened until the following morning. It seemed that after we had left, Prendergast and his gang had proceeded to put to death the 5 remaining prisoners. The 2 warders had been shot and thrown overboard, and so also had the 3rd mate. Prendergast then descended into the 'tween decks and with his own hands cut the throat of the unfortunate surgeon. There only remained the 1st mate, who was a bold and active man. When he saw the convict approaching him with the bloody knife in his hand, he kicked off his bonds, which he had somehow contrived to loosen, and rushing down the deck, he plunged into the afterhold. A dozen convicts, who descended with their pistols in search of him, found him with a matchbox in his hand, seated beside an open powder barrel, which was one of 100 carried on board, and swearing that he would blow all hands up if he were in any way molested. An instant later, the explosion occurred, though Hudson thought it was caused by the misdirected bullet of one of the convicts rather than the mate's match. Be the cause what it may, it was the end of the Gloria Scott and of the rabble who held command of her. Such, in a few words, my dear boy, is the history of this terrible business in which I was involved. Next day, we were picked up by the brig Hotspur, bound for Australia, whose captain found no difficulty in believing that we were the survivors of a passenger ship which had foundered. The transport ship Gloria Scott was set down by the Admiralty as being lost at sea, and no word has ever leaked out as to her true fate. After an excellent voyage, the Hotspur landed us at Sydney, where Evans and I changed our names and made our way to the diggings, where, among the crowds who were gathered from all nations, we had no difficulty in losing our former identities. The rest I need not relate. We prospered, we traveled, we came back as rich colonials to England, and we bought country estates. For more than 20 years we have led peaceful and useful lives, and we hoped that our past was forever buried. Imagine then my feelings when in the seaman who came to us, I recognized instantly the man who had been picked off the wreck. He had tracked us down somehow, and had set himself to live upon our fears. You will understand now how it was that I strove to keep the peace with him, and you will in some measure sympathize with me in the fears which fill me, now that he has gone from me to his other victim with threats upon his tongue. Underneath is written in a hand so shaky as to be hardly legible. Beddoes writes in cipher to say, H has told all. Sweet Lord, have mercy on our souls. That was the narrative which I read that night to young Trevor, and I think, Watson, that under the circumstances it was a dramatic one. The good fellow was heartbroken at it, and went out to the Teray tea planting, where I hear that he is doing well. As to the sailor and Beddoes, neither of them was ever heard of again after that day on which the letter of warning was written. They both disappeared utterly and completely. No complaint had been lodged with the police, so that Beddoes had mistaken a threat for a deed. Hudson had been seen lurking about, and it was believed by the police that he had done away with Beddoes and had fled. For myself, I believe that the truth was exactly the opposite. I think that it is most probable that Beddoes, pushed to desperation, and believing himself to have been already betrayed, had revenged himself upon Hudson, and had fled from the country with as much money as he could lay his hands on. Those are the facts of the case, Doctor, and if they are of any use to your collection, I am sure that they are very heartily at your service. Oh, interesting. So it didn't quite go into a whole lot of like actual Sherlock stuff. I think the main bit was, just showing his capabilities to the governor. And then the only part of the case was the cipher, which was also the cipher which was also cracked or whatever up here. So it was a really good first Sherlock thing. First Sherlock puzzle. I mean, it's not the first Sherlock story, but it's, again, in the canon, his first Sherlock story. So, yeah, that was good. That was interesting. And then, yeah, it was pretty much, usually it is Watson telling the stories, but in this one it was Sherlock himself telling the story. So it is, he's kind of coming around to writing down and collecting the cases. So that's fun. All right, here is the story. Agent G. Have to tell the story of Agent G from Greenville. Greenville is Missouri, right? Flew into Greenville for the night, not realizing how small the town was. You arrive and figure you will get an Uber to your hotel. In the meantime, you walk over to the main building, which has a museum and security. Oh, that's fun. Doors unlocked and nobody is present. Soon find out there is no Uber in this town, but there is a sign with taxi services. You start from the bottom and call every number. Oh no. Each number is coming back as no longer in service, except for the top one. This is Agent G, Greenville's sole transportation service. He says he will be at us soon. Roughly 30 minutes go by. There's no sign of the agent. Call him multiple times to no avail. Finally, decide you should leave and go to another airport. Keep in mind it's about 10:30. All right. Try to go back to your aircraft, but it was a one-way door out of the gate. And you had to call a number to get back in. Okay, all right. The number only works during the day, so you weren't able to get in touch with anyone. You hear a door close somewhere on the field. You begin calling to the person to see if they can let you in. Instead of someone coming out to help you, a pit bull comes out from behind the abandoned hangar. Thankfully, he's on the other side of the fence. Laughed, thinking that we're lucky he's on the other side. It then proceeds to crawl through a small gap in the fence and run up to you. Guess it did not have murder on its mind and just sniffed you and moved on. Both thought to yourselves, what, that could have been bad. Many minutes later, Agent G arrives, blasting 50 Cent with his wife in the passenger seat. He welcomes you and you begin heading down the road. Asks you to sign his book, which he keeps to track who he gives rides to. Okay. You're the only ones in the book for the past few days. You get into town and realize it's a terrible area. Oh no. There are many closed stores lining the streets and people hanging out at every corner. Agent G decides to stop at 2 convenience stores during your drive without telling you his plan to do this. The remainder of the drive is fine and you get to your hotel. He then proceeds to charge you $125 for a 20-minute ride. Even offered to charge you for $200 to include to drive in the morning. Declined since after that had no intention of using him in the morning. Right. Then got into the hotel and had Chex Mix for dinner. Delicious. The only good part of the night was getting the snacks for free, since the person behind the desk couldn't figure out how to charge you. You'll never forget your night in Greenville. Oh my God. That was wild. Oh my goodness. That was a great write-up too. That was awesome. It was very, very well paced and very descriptive. I'm glad it all worked out. Glad you weren't mauled by a pit bull or stranded at the airport, outside of the airport. Yeah. And that you didn't starve for lack of Chex Mix. But yes, free Chex Mix is good. Yeah. If you've learned anything, do not want to visit Greenville. That sounds about right. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And I haven't had a whole lot, or no, let me think. Yeah, I've had very little experience with like airport transportation. I want to at some point. I want to like start flying to other airports and then go tool around in the cities. But that is definitely something to think about, I guess. Wow. Okay. That is. It's almost like it's a mini story within a story. So I appreciate that. Thank you for writing that up or having had that written up. Oh, one guy you know has a folding electric bike he takes in your plane. That sounds awesome. I like that idea a lot. Depending on the size of the plane, how would that... Well, yeah. Because, like, how much does it weigh then? Does that do it? Like, how much does that do to, like, CG and weight and balance and stuff? I'm hoping that everything is working properly still. It's sounding okay? Okay. You just wrote that real quick while you read the story. Oh my, well, I read the story. That was awesome. It was. It was like, it was very, very... I don't know what the word I'm trying to think of is. It was a very entertaining read. Again, it might not have been very entertaining for you at the time, but great story. It fits in a 150. Okay. Electric bike wouldn't be much. Well, fair. Okay, sure. You're currently doing touch and goes on Massive at Myrtle Beach Airport. Nice. How is it going? I hope well. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's going well. Think it even fits in his 120. Oh gosh, no, I gotta look up what a 120 is. I'm sorry. I'm still. What was I looking up? Okay, sorry. A 120. I feel like it's not the Embraer 120. That do be a large multi-engine. Is it a Cessna 120? I'm sorry, I don't know these things. It is a Cessna. Okay. Thought I said touching grass at first, and we're kind of jealous. Oh no. Okay, finding the proper air. Oh, that's cool looking. Is that cute little tail wheel? I don't know if this is gonna like. I feel like the wheels, right? They kind of like stick out, so it's kind of like Cars, the movie Cars. When the cars stick their wheels out, that's how I feel like it looks, and it's adorable. Cute. Oh, that's really cool though. And that is definitely something to think about. Doing a bike or something. But yeah, that I mean, I've seen like they have the courtesy cars, and then they have sometimes the rental cars that you can do for the bigger ones. But yeah, I will at some point. I'll have to venture into that a bit more. But I'm glad it all worked out, and you got a good story out of it, so that's good. Okay. All right, so that was the Gloria Scott. Oh shoot, you know what we didn't do? Hang on. All right, so this is a half a page. 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, 4 page, 5 page, 6, 7, 8 pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 divided by 8.5. I think that's a little past your bet. But let me just do the math. 6 divided by 8.5. It was about 2/3 of the way through rather than 1/3 of the way through. But since yours was the only bet, yay, you win! Woohoo! Unless it's like, what is it? Isn't there that whole like Price is Right thing where it's like you have to be... Oh yeah, you do have to be under. So you were under. You were right. Excellent. In fairness, no one plays your bet. Right, exactly. So you win by default. That was what you were counting on, wasn't it? Oh, that's awesome. So there. Ships end blow, apparently. And it did. The ship did eventually blow. So let this be a lesson, fellas. If you're gonna fail, go for gold. That is fair. Might as well. All right, I'm so paranoid now since I had like last time I completely forgot the sound and then just messed the sound up. Failed so hard you won. I don't think you failed that hard, but I mean, you know what? Either way, it did. It worked. So, all right, that was the Gloria Scott. And now we shall commence our second and final story for the evening, the Musgrave Ritual. Dun, dun, dun. Are you speaking to me? Do I want to fly professionally? Yes. In some way, shape, or form. Ouch. Um, yeah, I don't know yet. I'm just kind of going with whatever happens as things happen. So I have opportunities to potentially do some multi-engine gigs, so I might be looking into getting my multi-engine sooner than I anticipated, but other than that, yeah, just working on the CFI for now and seeing what else comes out of that. So if you got tips for stuff like that, I kind of like, I feel like the ferry thing would be interesting and fun to do, especially because it would be planes that I would already be able to fly in some instances. So yeah, but after that, I don't know. I always thought not airline, but have talked to my original instructor, number one instructor, who didn't think he was gonna like it either, but now he has been in it for a little while now, and he does like it. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. What are your plans then? Have we talked about? It is. It's been such. I don't know. It does. It seems like there's just always something going, and my brain has not had a chance to like slow down for quite a bit now. So I apologize when I forget. Hopefully, airlines next year, early next year. Wow. Okay, so it's coming. Nice. So how many hours do you have? And do you have like an in right now? Like you're got the thing where you're okay. So my instructor, my commercial instructor, he doesn't have his 1500 yet, but he has been hired. He just had to say, I'm probably going to get my I'll be getting my hours by like this date. And then they're like, all right, we'll have a class date for you once you let us know. 450 and you need 1,000. Okay. Yeah. No. So are you getting, I mean, you just got 35. So that was quick. So you're flying roughly 100 hours per month between instructing and time building. Excellent. Very nice. Excellent. Yeah. So that'll be very quick and good then. So do you have a like thing right now, or you're going to start are you going to start looking soon, or have you already looked and got something? I guess that is my question. I'm sorry that it's coming out so horrible. Again, I have so little brain power left. Did I pause it? No, that's good. Okay. Sorry. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. We're good. We're good. Oh, are we? Okay. Okay. You interviewed with PSA and you still need to do a technical interview. Okay, okay. It's scheduled for the 28th, but you're going to push that back. Oh, get more hours in, or interesting. Okay, okay. And PSA is what exactly? I will Google as you tell me. You need to study more. Oh, okay, okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, okay. Very cool. Ooh, that'll be fun. Okay. Well, I do. I hope it goes well. It's an American Airlines wholly owned. Okay, okay. I don't know how all of that goes. So, so okay. Sounds good. Well, it will get that studying in, and it will. It'll be great. And it'll be that it'll be early next year before you know it. It's a public service announcement. I realized it as I said it, but also I was like, no, not going to say it. So you went ahead and said, and that's okay. Just a regional owned by American. Oh, okay. Sounds good. Okay. Yeah, I understand. It's one of those things where, like, I feel like I understand, but do I really? Eh? So I do. I believe I understand. But very cool. Oh, that'll be fun. That'll be nice. So fingers crossed for you. Feel like you won't need the fingers to be crossed. It'll just go well. But yeah, that'll be fun. So cool. Yay. All right. Okay. The Musgrave Ritual. An anomaly which often struck me in the character of my friend Sherlock Holmes was that, although in his methods of thought he was the neatest and most methodical of mankind, and although also he affected a certain quiet primness of dress, he was nonetheless, in his personal habits, one of the most untidy men that ever drove a fellow lodger to distraction. Not that I am in the least conventional in that respect myself. The rough and tumble work in Afghanistan, coming on the top of a natural bohemianism of disposition, has made me rather more lax than befits a medical man. But with me there is a limit, and when I find a man who keeps his cigars in the coal scuttle, his tobacco in the toe end of a Persian slipper, and his unanswered correspondence transfixed by a jackknife into the very center of his wooden mantelpiece, then I begin to give myself virtuous airs. I have always held, too, that pistol practice should be distinctly an open-air pastime, and when Holmes, in one of his queer humors, would sit in an armchair with his hair trigger and 100 boxer cartridges and proceed to adorn the opposite wall with a patriotic VR done in bullet pox, I felt strongly that neither the atmosphere nor the appearance of our room was improved by it. Our chambers were always full of chemicals and of criminal relics, which had a way of wandering into unlikely positions and of turning up in the butter dish or in even less desirable places. But his papers were my great crux. He had a horror of destroying documents, especially those which were connected with his past cases, and yet it was only once in every year or two that he would muster energy to docket and arrange them. For, as I have mentioned somewhere in these incoherent memoirs, the outbursts of passionate energy when he performed the remarkable feats with which his name is associated were followed by reactions of lethargy, during which he would lie about with his violin and his books, hardly moving save from the sofa to the table. Thus, month after month, his papers accumulated, until every corner of the room was stacked with bundles of manuscript which were on no account to be burned, and which could not be put away save by their owner. One winter's night, as we sat together by the fire, I ventured to suggest to him that, as he had finished pasting extracts into his commonplace book, he might employ the next 2 hours in making our room a little more habitable. He could not deny the justice of my request, so with a rather rueful face, he went off to his bedroom, from which he returned, presently pulling a large tin box behind him. This he placed in the middle of the floor, and, squatting down upon a stool in front of it, he threw back the lid. I could see that it was already a third full of bundles of paper tied up with red tape into separate packages. "There are cases enough here, Watson," said he, looking at me with mischievous eyes. "I think that if you knew all that I had in this box, you would ask me to pull some out, instead of putting others in." "These are the records of your early work, then?" I asked. "I have often wished that I had notes of those cases." "Yes, my boy. These were all done prematurely before my biographer had come to glorify me." He lifted bundle after bundle in a tender, caressing sort of way. "They are not all successes, Watson," said he, "but there are some pretty little problems among them. Here's the record of the Tarleton murders, and the case of Vanbury, the wine merchant, and the adventure of the old Russian woman, and the singular affair of the aluminium crutch, as well as a full account of Ricoletti of the Clubfoot and his abominable wife. And here, now, this really is something a little recherche. I can't remember what it is. We've looked this up before. Recherche. Recherche. Rare, exotic, or obscure. Recherche. And here, now, this really is something a little recherche. Ooh. He dived his arm down to the bottom of the chest and brought up a small wooden box with a sliding lid, such as children's toys are kept in. From within, he produced a crumpled piece of paper, a crumpled piece of paper and old-fashioned brass key, and I think it's supposed to be un. From within, he produced a crumpled piece of paper, an old-fashioned brass key, a peg of wood with a ball of string attached to it, and 3 rusty old discs of metal. Well, my boy, what do you make of this lot? He asked, smiling at my expression. It is a curious collection. Very curious, and the story that hangs round it will strike you as being more curious still. These relics have a history, then. So much so that they are history. What do you mean by that? Sherlock Holmes picked them up one by one and laid them along the edge of the table. Then he reseated himself in his chair and looked them over with a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. These, said he, are all that I have left to remind me of the adventure of the Musgrave Ritual. I had heard him mention the case more than once, though I had never been able to gather the details. I should be so glad, said I, if you would give me an account of it. And leave the litter as it is, he cried mischievously. Your tidiness won't bear much strain after all, Watson, but I should be glad that you should add this case to your annals, for there are, points in it which make it quite unique in the criminal records of this, or, I believe, of any other country. A collection of my trifling achievements would certainly be incomplete, which contained no account of this very singular business. You may remember how the affair of the Gloria Scott and my conversation with the unhappy man whose fate I told you of first turned my attention in the direction of the profession which has become my life's work. You see me now when my name has become known far and wide, and when I am generally recognized both by the public and by the official force as being a final court of appeal in doubtful cases. Even when you knew me first, at the time of the affair which you have commemorated in A Study in Scarlet, I had already established a considerable, though not a very lucrative, connection. You can hardly realize then how difficult I found it at first, and how long I had to wait before I succeeded in making any headway. Ida, you're gonna bounce. Sounds good. Don't want to go to bed, but you gotta work in the morning, right? Yes. And it's Thursday. It's Thursday, though. So tomorrow's Friday. So hopefully that'll be good. Well, it was good to have you here. Congratulations on your win. A chicken cheer for you. Cheer. Cheer. I don't know. Sorry. But yes. Happy to have you here. Hope to see you again soon. Hope you sleep well, and I hope work goes better. And yeah, all the good things. Until next time. Okay. When I first came up to London, I had rooms in Montague Street, just round the corner from the British Museum, and there I waited, filling in my too abundant leisure time by studying all those branches of science which might make me more efficient. Now and again, cases came in my way, principally through the introduction of old fellow students, for during my last years at the university, there was a good deal of talk there about myself and my methods. The third of these cases was that of the Musgrave Ritual, and it is to the interest which was aroused by that singular chain of events and the large issues which proved to be at stake that I trace my first stride towards to the position. My first stride towards to the position. Forward to the position which I now hold? I don't know. That I trace my first stride towards to the position which I now hold. Doesn't seem right, but I'm going to leave it. Reginald Musgrave had been in the same college as myself, and I had some slight acquaintance with him. He was not generally popular among the undergraduates, though it was always seemed to me that what was set down as pride was really an attempt to cover extreme natural diffidence. In appearance, he was a man of exceedingly aristocratic type, thin, high-nosed, and large-eyed, with languid and yet courtly manners. He was indeed a scion of one of the very oldest families in the kingdom, though his branch was a cadet one which had separated from the northern Musgraves some time in the 16th century, and had established itself in western Sussex, where the manor house of Hurlstone is perhaps the oldest inhabited building in the county. Something of his birthplace seemed to cling to the man, and I never looked at his pale, keen face or the poise of his head without associating him with gray archways and mullioned windows and all the venerable wreckage of a feudal keep. Once or twice we drifted into talk, and I can remember that more than once he expressed a keen interest in my methods of observation and inference. All right. For 4 years, I had seen nothing of him until one morning he walked into my room in Montague Street. He had changed little, was dressed like a young man of fashion. He was always a bit of a dandy, and preserved the same quiet, suave manner which had formerly distinguished him. "How has all gone with you, Musgrave?" I asked, after we had cordially shaken hands. "You probably heard of my poor father's death," said he. "He was carried off about 2 years ago. Since then I have of course had the Hurlstone estates to manage, and as I am member for my district as well, my life has been a busy one. But I understand, Holmes, that you are turning to practical ends those powers with which you used to amaze us." "Yes," said I have taken to living by my wits." "I am delighted to hear it, for your advice at present would be exceedingly valuable to me. We have had some very strange doings at Hurlstone, and the police have been able to throw no light upon the matter. It is really the most extraordinary and inexplicable business." You can imagine with what eagerness I listened to him, Watson, for the very chance for which I had been panting during all those months of inaction seemed to have come within my reach. In my inmost heart, I believed that I could succeed where others failed, and now I had the opportunity to test myself. "Pray let me have the details," I cried. Reginald Musgrave sat down opposite to me and lit the cigarette which I had pushed towards him. "You must know," said he, "that though I am a bachelor, I have to keep up a considerable staff of servants at Hurlstone, for it is a rambling old place and takes a good deal of looking after. I preserve two, and in the pheasant months I usually have a house party, so that it would not do to be short-handed. Altogether there are 8 maids, the cook, the butler, 2 footmen, and a boy. The garden and the stables, of course, have a separate staff. Of these servants, the one who had been longest in our service was Brunton, the butler. He was a young schoolmaster out of place when he was first taken up by my father, but he was a man of great energy and character, and he soon became quite invaluable in the household. He was a well-grown, handsome man, with a splendid forehead, and though he has been with us for 20 years, he cannot be more than 40 now. With his personal advantages and his extraordinary gifts, for he can speak several languages and play nearly every musical instrument, it is wonderful that he should have been satisfied so long in such a position, but I suppose that he was comfortable, and lacked energy to make any change. The butler of Hurlstone is always a thing that is remembered by all who visit us. But this paragon has one fault. He is a bit of a Don Juan, and you can imagine that for a man like him, it is not a very difficult part to play in a quiet country district. When he was married it was all right, but since he has been a widower, we have had no end of trouble with him. A few months ago we were in hopes that he was about to settle down again, for he became engaged to Rachel Howells, our second housemaid. But he has thrown her over since then and taken up with Janet Tregellis, the daughter of the head gamekeeper. Rachel, who is a very good girl, but of an excitable Welsh temperament, had a sharp touch of brain fever, and goes about the house now, or did until yesterday, like a black-eyed shadow of her former self. That was our first drama at Hurlstone, but a second one came to drive it from our minds, and it was prefaced by the disgrace and dismissal of Butler Brunton. Uh-oh. This was how it came about. I have said that the man was intelligent, and this very intelligence has caused his ruin, for it seems to have led to an insatiable curiosity about things which did not in the least concern him. I had no idea of the lengths to which this would carry him until the merest accident opened my eyes to it. I have said that the house is a rambling one. One day last week, on Thursday night to be more exact, I found that I could not sleep, having foolishly taken a cup of strong café noir, black coffee, after my dinner, I believe. After struggling against it until 2 in the morning, I felt that it was quite hopeless, so I rose and lit the candle with the intention of continuing a novel which I was reading. The book, however, had been left in the billiard room, so I pulled on my dressing gown and started off to get it. In order to reach the billiard room, I had to descend a flight of stairs and then to cross the head of a passage which led to the library and the gun room. You can imagine my surprise when, as I looked down this corridor, I saw a glimmer of light coming from the open door of the library. I had myself extinguished the lamp and closed the door before coming to bed. Naturally, my first thought was of burglars. The corridors at Hurlstone have their walls largely decorated with trophies of old weapons. From one of these I picked a battle axe, and then, leaving my candle behind me, I crept on tiptoe down the passage and peeped in at the open door. Brunton, the butler, was in the library. He was sitting, fully dressed, in an easy chair, with a slip of paper which looked like a map upon his knee, and his forehead sunk forward upon his hand in deep thought. I stood dumb with astonishment, watching him from the darkness. A small taper on the edge of the table shed a feeble light, which sufficed to show me that he was fully dressed. Suddenly, as I looked, he rose from his chair, and walking over to a bureau at the side, he unlocked it and drew out one of the papers. He unlocked it and drew out one of the drawers. Reading ahead, From this, he took a paper, and returning to his seat, he flattened it out beside the taper on the edge of the table, and began to study it with minute attention. My indignation at this calm examination of our family documents overcame me so far that I took a step forward, and Brunton, looking up, saw me standing in the doorway. He sprang to his feet, his face turned livid with fear, and he thrust into his breast the chart-like paper which he had been originally studying. "So," said I, "this is how you repay the trust which we have reposed in you. You will leave my service tomorrow." He bowed with the look of a man who is utterly crushed, and slunk past me without a word. The taper was still on the table, and by its light I glanced to see what the paper was which Brunton had taken from the bureau. To my surprise, it was nothing of any importance at all, but simply a copy of the questions and answers in the singular old observance called the Musgrave Ritual. It is a sort of ceremony peculiar to our family, which each Musgrave for centuries past has gone through on his coming of age. A thing of private interest, and perhaps of some little importance to the archaeologist, like our own blazonings and charges, but of no practical use whatever. "We had better come back to the paper afterwards," said I. "If you think it really necessary—" "We had better come back to the paper afterwards," said I. "If you think it really necessary," he answered with some hesitation. To continue my statement, however, I relocked the bureau using the key which Brunton had left, and I had turned to go when I was surprised to find that the butler had returned and was standing before me. "Mr. Musgrave, sir," he cried in a voice which was hoarse with emotion, "I can't bear disgrace, sir. I've always been proud above my station in life, and disgrace would kill me. My blood will be on your head, sir. It will indeed, if you drive me to despair. If you cannot keep me after what has passed, then for God's sake let me give you notice and leave in a month, as if of my own free will. I could stand that, Mr. Musgrave, but not to be cast out before all the folk that I know so well." "You don't deserve much consideration, Brunton," I answered. "Your conduct has been most infamous. However, as you have been a long time in the family, I have no wish to bring public disgrace upon you. A month, however, is too long. Take yourself away in a week, and give what reason you like for going." "Only a week, sir," he cried in a despairing voice. "A fortnight, say at least a fortnight." "A week," I repeated, "and you may consider yourself to have been very leniently dealt with." He crept away, his face sunk upon his breast like a broken man, while I put out the light and returned to my room. For 2 days after this, Brunton was most assiduous in his attention to his duties. I made no allusion to what had passed, and waited with some curiosity to see how he would cover his disgrace. On the third morning, however, he did not appear, as was his custom, after breakfast to receive my instructions for the day. As I left the dining room, I happened to meet Rachel Howells, the maid. I have told you that she had only recently recovered from an illness, and was looking so wretchedly pale and wan that I remonstrated with her for being at work. You should be in bed, I said. Come back to your duties when you are stronger. She looked at me with so strange an expression that I began to suspect that her brain was affected. I am strong enough, Mr. Musgrave, said she. We will see what the doctor says, I answered. You must stop work now, and when you go downstairs, just say that I wish to see Brunton. The butler is gone, said she. Gone? Gone where? He is gone. No one has seen him. He is not in his room. Oh, yes, he is gone. He is gone. She fell back against the wall with shriek after shriek of laughter, while I, horrified at this sudden, hysterical attack, rushed to the bell to summon help. The girl was taken to her room, still screaming and sobbing, while I made inquiries about Brunton. There was no doubt about it that he had disappeared. His bed had not been slept in. He had been seen by no one since he had retired to his room the night before, and yet it was difficult to see how he could have left the house, as both windows and doors were found to be fastened in the morning. His clothes, his watch, and even his money were in his room, but the black suit which he usually wore was missing. His slippers, too, were gone, but his boots were left behind. Where, then, could Butler Brunton have gone in the night, and what could have become of him now? You're back. Excellent, excellent. You're not perfect timing. Awesome. How did the flying go? I hope well. Of course, we searched the house from cellar to garret, but there was no trace of him. It is, as I have said, a labyrinth of an old house, especially the original wing, which is now practically uninhabited. But we ransacked every room and cellar without discovering... Oh, I should make sure that this is good. Sorry if the mic is at all not good. There, that should be better. Of course, we searched the house from cellar to garret, but there was no trace of him. It is, as I have said, a labyrinth of an old house, especially the original wing, which is now practically uninhabited. But we ransacked every room and cellar without discovering the least sign of the missing man. It was incredible to me that he could have gone away, leaving all his property behind him. And yet, where could he be? I called in the local police, but without success. Rain had fallen on the night before, and we examined the lawn and the paths all round the house, but in vain. Matters were in this state when a new development quite drew our attention away from the original mystery. For 2 days, Rachel Howells had been so ill, sometimes delirious, sometimes hysterical, that a nurse had been employed to sit up with her at night. On the third night after Brunton's disappearance, the nurse, finding her patient sleeping nicely, had dropped into a nap in the armchair, when she woke in the early morning to find the bed empty, the window open, and no signs of the invalid. I was instantly aroused, and with the 2 footmen, started off at once in search of the missing girl. It was not difficult to tell the direction which she had taken, for, starting from under her window, we could follow her footmarks easily across the lawn, to the edge of the mere, where they vanished close to the gravel path which leads out of the grounds. The lake there is 8 feet deep, and you can imagine our feelings when we saw that the trail of the poor demented girl came to an end at the edge of it. Oh no. It went well, just stayed in the pattern today at Myrtle Beach. Nice! That is, pattern work, it does. Sometimes it seems like monotonous, but it is. It's something that must be done. And it can be rather soothing. So, yeah, I am glad it went well. And I'm sure that's probably a beautiful area as well. Of course, we had the drags at once and set to work to recover the remains, but no trace of the body could we find. On the other hand, we brought to the surface an object of a most unexpected kind. It was a linen bag which contained within it a mass of old, rusted, and discolored metal and several dull-colored pieces of pebble or glass. This strange find was all that we could get from the Mere, and although we made every possible search and inquiry yesterday, we know nothing of the fate either of Rachel Howells or of Richard Brunton. The county police are at their wits' end, and I have come up to you as a last resource. You did it to test your new yoke, right, okay, and readjust the settings as needed with the yoke. And did you get it all figured out? Fingers crossed? That'd be good. You can imagine, Watson, with what eagerness I listened to this extraordinary sequence of events and endeavored to piece them together, and to devise some common thread upon which they might all hang. The butler was gone. The maid was gone. The maid had loved the butler, but had afterwards had cause to hate him. She was of Welsh blood, fiery and passionate. She had been terribly excited immediately after his disappearance. She had flung into the lake a bag containing some curious contents. These were all factors which had to be taken into consideration, and yet none of them got quite to the heart of the matter. What was the starting point of this chain of events? There lay the end of this tangled line. I must see that paper, Musgrave, said I, which this butler of yours thought it worth his while to consult, even at the risk of the loss of his place. It is rather an absurd business, this ritual of ours, he answered, but it has at least the saving grace of antiquity to excuse it. I have a copy of the questions and answers here if you care to run your eye over them. He handed me the very paper which I have here, Watson, and this is the strange catechism to which each Musgrave had to submit when he came to man's estate. I will read you the questions and answers as they stand. Whose was it? His who is gone. Who shall have it? He who will come. Where was the sun? Over the oak. Where was the shadow? Under the elm. How was it stepped? North by 10 and by 10, east by 5 and by 5, south by 2 and by 2, west by 1 and by 1, and so under. What shall we give for it? All that is ours. Why should we give it? For the sake of the trust. The original has no date, but is in the spelling of the middle of the 17th century, remarked Musgrave. I am afraid, however, that it can be of little help to you in solving this mystery. At least, said I, it gives us another mystery, and one which is even more interesting than the first. Oh, yes, the missing people. That's not interesting. It may be that the solution of the one may prove to be the solution of the other. You will excuse me, Musgrave, if I say that your butler appears to me to have been a very clever man, and to have had a clearer insight than 10 generations of his masters. I hardly follow you, said Musgrave. The paper seems to me to be of no practical importance. But to me it seems immensely practical, and I fancy that Brunton took the same view. He had probably seen it before that night on which you caught him. It is very possible. We took no pains to hide it. Oops, there. Ugh! He simply wished, I should imagine, to refresh his memory upon that last occasion. He had, as I understand, some sort of map or chart which he was comparing with the manuscript, and which he thrust into his pocket when you appeared. That is true, but what could he have to do with this old family custom of ours, and what does this rigmarole mean? I don't think that we should have much difficulty in determining that, said I. With your permission, we will take the first train down to Sussex, and go a little more deeply into the matter upon the spot. The same afternoon saw us both at Hurlstone. Possibly you have seen pictures and read descriptions of the famous old building, so I will confine my account of it to saying that it is built in the shape of an L, the long arm being the more modern portion, and the shorter the ancient nucleus from which the other had developed. Over the low, heavily lintelled door, in the center of this old part, is chiseled the date, 1607, but experts are agreed that the beams and stonework are really much older than this. The enormously thick walls and tiny windows of this part had in the last century driven the family into building the new wing. and the old one was used now as a storehouse and a cellar when it was used at all. A splendid park with fine old timber surrounds the house, and the lake to which my client had referred lay lay close to the avenue, about 200 yards from the building. I was already firmly convinced, Watson, that there were not 3 separate mysteries here, but one only, and that if I could read the Musgrave Ritual aright, I should hold in my hand the clue which would lead me to the truth concerning both the butler Brunton and the maid Howells. To that, then, I turned all my energies. Why should this servant be so anxious to master this old formula? Evidently because he saw something in it which had escaped all those generations of country squires, and from which he expected some personal advantage. What was it, then, and how had it affected his fate? It was perfectly obvious to me, on reading the ritual, that the measurements must refer to some spot to which the rest of the document alluded, and that if we could find that spot, we should be in a fair way towards finding what the secret was which the old Musgraves had thought it necessary to embalm in so curious a fashion. There were 2 guides given us to start with, an oak and an elm. As to the oak, there could be no question at all. Right in front of the house, upon the left-hand side of the drive, there stood a patriarch among oaks, one of the most magnificent trees that I have ever seen. That was there when your ritual was drawn up, said I, as we drove past it. It was there at the Norman Conquest, in all probability, he answered. It has a girth of 23 feet. Here was one of my fixed points secured. Have you any old elms? I asked. There used to be a very old one over yonder, but it was struck by lightning 10 years ago, and we cut down the stump. You can see where it used to be. Oh, yes. There are no other elms? No old ones, but plenty of beeches. I should like to see where it grew. We had driven up in a dog cart, and my client led me away at once, without our entering the house, to the scar on the lawn where the elm had stood. It was nearly midway between the oak and the house. My investigations seemed to be progressing. I suppose it is impossible to find out how high the elm was? I asked. I can give you it at once. It was 64 feet. How do you come to know it? I asked in surprise. When my old tutor used to give me an exercise in trigonometry, it always took the shape of measuring heights. When I was a lad, I worked out every tree and building in the estate. This was an unexpected piece of luck. My data were coming more quickly than I could have reasonably hoped. Tell me, I asked, did your butler ever ask you such a question? Reginald Musgrave looked at me in astonishment. Now that you call it to my mind, he answered, Brunton did ask me about the height of the tree some months ago, in connection with some little argument with the groom. This was excellent news, Watson, for it showed me that I was on the right road. I looked up at the sun. It was low in the heavens, and I calculated that in less than an hour it would lie just above the topmost branches of the old oak. One condition mentioned in the ritual would then be fulfilled, and the shadow of the elm must mean the farther end of the shadow, otherwise the trunk would have been chosen as the guide. I had then to find where the far end of the shadow would fall when the sun was just clear of the oak. That must have been difficult, Holmes, when the elm was no longer there. Well, at least I knew that if Brunton could do it, I could also. Besides, there was no real difficulty. I went with Musgrave to his study and whittled myself this peg, to which I tied this long string with a knot at each yard. Then I took 2 lengths of a fishing rod, which came to just 6 feet, and I went back with my client to where the elm had been. The sun was just grazing the top of the oak. I fastened the rod on end, marked out the direction of the shadow, and measured it. It was 9 feet in length. Of course, the calculation now was a simple one. If a rod of 6 feet threw a shadow of 9, a tree of 64 feet would throw one of 96, and the line of the one would of course the line of the other. I measured out the distance, which brought me almost to the wall of the house, and I thrust a peg into the spot. You can imagine my exultation, Watson, When within 2 inches of my peg, I saw a conical depression in the ground. I knew that it was the mark made by Brunton in his measurements, and that I was still upon his trail. From this starting point, I proceeded to step, having first taken the cardinal points by my pocket compass. 10 steps with each foot took me along parallel with the wall of the house, and again I marked my spot with a peg. Then I carefully paced off 5 to the east and 2 to the south. It brought me to the very threshold of the old door. 2 steps to the west meant now that I was to go 2 places down the stone-flagged passage, and this was the place indicated by the ritual. Never have I felt such a cold chill of disappointment, Watson. For a moment it seemed to me that there must be some radical mistake in my calculations. The setting sun shone full upon the passage floor, and I could see that the old foot-worn gray stones with which it was paved were firmly cemented together, and had certainly not been moved for many a long year. Brunton had not been at work here. I tapped upon the floor, and it sounded the same all over, and there was no sign of any crack or crevice. But fortunately, it's supposed to be capitalized, Musgrave, who had begun to appreciate the meaning of my proceedings, and who was now as excited as myself, took out his manuscript to check my calculation. "And under," he cried. "You have omitted the and under." I had thought that it meant that we were to dig, but now, of course, I saw at once that I was wrong. "There is a cellar under this, then?" I cried. "Yes, and as old as the house. Down here, through this door." We went down a winding stone stair, and my companion, striking a match, lit a large lantern which stood on a barrel in the corner. In an instant it was obvious that we had at last come upon the true place, and that we had not been the only people to visit the spot recently. It had been used for the storage of wood, but the billets, which had evidently been littered over the floor, were now piled at the sides, so as to leave a clear space in the middle. In this space lay a large and heavy flagstone with a rusted iron ring in the center, to which a thick shepherd's check muffler was attached. "By Jove!" cried my client, "that's Brunton's muffler. I have seen it on him, and could swear to it. What has the villain been doing here?" At my suggestion, a couple of the county police were summoned to be present, and I then endeavored to raise the stone by pulling on the cravat. I could only move it slightly, and it was with the aid of one of the constables that I succeeded at last in carrying it to one side. A black hole yawned beneath, into which we all peered, while Musgrave, kneeling at the side, pushed down the lantern. A small chamber, about 7 feet deep and 4 feet square, lay open to us. At one side of this was a squat, brass-bound wooden box, the lid of which was hinged upwards, with this curious old-fashioned key projecting from the lock. It was furred outside by a thick layer of dust, and damp and worms had eaten through the wood, so that a crop of livid fungi was growing on the inside of it. Several discs of metal, old coins apparently, such as I hold here, were scattered over the bottom of the box, but it contained nothing else. At the moment, however, we had no thought for the old chest, for our eyes were riveted upon that which crouched beside it. It was the figure of a man, clad in a suit of black, who squatted down upon his hams with his forehead sunk upon the edge of the box and his 2 arms thrown out on each side of it. The attitude had drawn all the stagnant blood to the face, and no man could have recognized that distorted, liver-colored countenance. But his height, his dress, and his hair were all sufficient to show my client, when we had drawn the body up, that it was indeed his missing butler. He had been dead some days, but there was no wound or bruise upon his person to show how he had met his dreadful end. When his body had been carried from the cellar, we found ourselves still confronted with a problem which was almost as formidable as that with which we had started. Ugh. I confess that so far, Watson, I had been disappointed in my investigation. I had reckoned upon solving the matter when once I had found the place referred to in the ritual, But now I was there, and was apparently as far as ever from knowing what it was which the family had concealed with such elaborate precautions. It is true that I had thrown a light upon the fate of Brunton, but now I had to ascertain how that fate had come upon him, and what part had been played in the matter by the woman who had disappeared. I sat down upon a keg in the corner, and thought the whole matter carefully over. You know my methods in such cases, Watson. I put myself in the man's place, and having first gauged his intelligence, I try to imagine how I should myself have proceeded under the same circumstances. In this case, the matter was simplified by Brunton's intelligence being quite first-rate, so that it was unnecessary to make any allowance for the personal equation, as the astronomers have dubbed it. He knew that something valuable was concealed. He had spotted the place. He found that the stone which covered it was just too heavy for a man to move unaided. What would he do next? He could not get help from outside, even if he had someone whom he could trust, without the unbarring of doors and considerable risk of detection. Oh no, I have a thought. It was better, if he could, to have his helpmate inside the house. But whom could he ask? This girl had been devoted to him. A man always finds it hard to realize that he may have finally lost a woman's love, however badly he may have treated her. He would try by a few attentions to make his peace with the girl Howells, and then would engage her as his accomplice. Together they would come at night to the cellar, and their united force would suffice to raise the stone. So far I could follow their actions as if I had actually seen them. But for two of them, and one a woman, it must have been heavy work, the raising of that stone. A burly Sussex policeman and I had found it no light job. What would they do to assist them? Probably what I should have done myself. I rose and examined carefully the different billets of wood which were scattered round the floor. Almost at once I came upon what I expected. One piece, about 3 feet in length, had a very marked indentation at one end, while several were flattened at the sides, as if they had been compressed by some considerable weight. Evidently, as they had dragged the stone up, they had thrust the chunks of wood into the chink, until at last, when the opening was large enough to crawl through, they would hold it open by a billet placed lengthwise, which might very well become indented at the lower end, since the whole weight of the stone would press it down onto the edge of this other slab. So far, I was still on safe ground. And now, how was I to proceed to reconstruct this midnight drama? Clearly, only one could fit into the hole, and that one was Brunton. The girl must have waited above. Brunton then unlocked the box, handed up the contents, presumably, since they were not to be found, and then what happened? What smoldering fire of vengeance had suddenly sprung into flame in this passionate Celtic woman's soul when she saw the man who had wronged her perhaps far more than we suspected, in her power? Was it a chance that the wood had slipped, and that the stone had shut Brunton into what had become his sepulchre? Had she only been guilty of silence as to his fate? Or had some sudden blow from her hand dashed the support away and sent the slab crashing down into its place? Be that as it might, I seemed to see that woman's figure still clutching at her treasure trove and flying wildly up the winding stair, with her ears ringing perhaps with the muffled screams from behind her, and with the drumming of frenzied hands against the slab of stone which was choking her faithless lover's life out. No. Here was the secret of her blanched face, her shaken nerves, her peals of hysterical laughter on the next morning. But what had been in the box? What had she done with it? Of course, it must have been the old metal and pebbles which my client had dragged from the mere. She had thrown them in there at the first opportunity to remove the last trace of her crime. For 20 minutes I had sat motionless, thinking the matter out. Musgrave still stood with a very pale face, swinging his lantern and peering down into the hole. "These are coins of Charles I," said he, holding out the few which had been in the box. "You see, we were right in fixing our date for the ritual." Oops. "We may find something else of Charles I," I cried, as the probable meaning of the first two questions of the first two questions of the ritual broke suddenly upon me. Let me see the contents of the bag which you fished from the mere. We ascended to his study, and he laid the debris before me. I could understand his regarding it as of small importance when I looked at it, for the metal was almost black, and the stones lusterless and dull. I rubbed one of them on my sleeve, however, and it glowed afterwards like a spark in the dark hollow of my hand. The metalwork was in the form of a double ring, but it had been bent and twisted out of its original shape. You must bear in mind, said I, that the royal party made head in England even after the death of the king, and that when they at last fled they probably left many of their most precious possessions buried behind them, with the intention of returning for them in more peaceful times. My ancestor, Sir Ralph Musgrave, was a prominent cavalier and the right-hand man of Charles II in his wanderings, said my friend. Ah, indeed, I answered. Well, now I think that really should give us the last link that we wanted. I must congratulate you on coming into the possession, though in rather a tragic manner, of a relic which is of great intrinsic value, but of even greater importance as an historical curiosity. What is it, then? He gasped in astonishment. It is nothing less than the ancient crown of the kings of England. The crown? Precisely. Consider what the ritual says. How does it run? How does it run? Whose was it? His, who is gone. That was after the execution of Charles. Then, who shall have it? He who will come. That was Charles II, whose advent was already foreseen. There can, I think, be no doubt that this battered and shapeless diadem once encircled the brows of the royal Stuarts. And how came it in the pond? Ah, that is a question that will take some time to answer. And with that, I sketched out to him the whole long chain of surmise and of proof which I had constructed. The twilight had closed in, and the moon was shining brightly in the sky before my narrative was finished. And how was it, then, that Charles did not get his crown when he returned? Asked Musgrave, pushing back the relic into its linen bag. Ah, there you lay your finger upon the one point which we shall probably never be able to clear up. It is likely that the Musgrave who held the secret died in the interval, and by some oversight left this guide to his descendant without explaining the meaning of it. From that day to this, it has been handed down from father to son, until at last it came within reach of a man who tore its secret out of it and lost his life in the venture. And that's the story of the Musgrave Ritual, Watson. They have the crown down at Hurlstone, though they had some legal bother and a considerable sum to pay before they were allowed to retain it. I am sure that if you mentioned my name, they would be happy to show it to you. Of the woman, nothing was ever heard, and the probability is that she got away out of England and carried herself and the memory of her crime to some land beyond the seas. Oh! There was a lot more deduction in that one than the first one, but just as interesting. And it was a rather happy one. Yes, death was had, but justice, I don't know. Yeah. And of course, the buried treasure is always fun, and the riddles and all that. I mean, I like the sort of out that he has. There you. This one. Can you see my? Oops, shoot. Can you see my mouse? There. There you lay your finger upon the one point which we shall probably never be able to clear up. It is likely that the Musgrave who held the secret died in the interval, and by some oversight left this guide to his descendant without explaining the meaning of it. I mean, it is. It's convenient, but also, probable is not the right word that I'm looking for. Believable, I guess. So, because there wouldn't, if somewhere along the line, one of the Musgraves decided they weren't going to do the ritual anymore and the ritual was lost to time and nobody ever found it again, there wouldn't be a story. So, since there is a story, that means it worked out where it did happen somehow, way or another, that we don't have to explain because, haha, we don't have to. We just don't have to. But yeah, it was good. And again, all the other ones that we've read, even including last week's, the two that we've read at a time have been like fairly connected or have had some connection. This one is a little less, I feel like. I mean, or like it's connected but dichotomic. That's not the word that I'm trying to think of, but like kind of somewhat opposite. So it's like, I mean, that the first one was in the sea, and not a whole lot of deduction, just like a little bit of it, and it wouldn't have needed Sherlock anyway, technically. And then there's this one, which they probably wouldn't have found any of the rest of that out without Sherlock, and it happened on land and inland, and yeah. Huh. It is. They seem slightly less connected than the other ones, but I think I can still make an argument. But that was I love those sort of national treasure sort of like thing. But that was the Musgrave Ritual and the Gloria Scott. And we will call it there. Yay. I've enjoyed it. It's so good. It's always so good. And yeah. I have read these before, but I have. It's been a while and I forgot them. So yeah. So now we get to read through them again, and I get to get little inklings of things that maybe I'm deducing things properly, or maybe I'm just remembering. So you passed your commercial! Congratulations! When did you pass your commercial? What are you doing now? What's happening? That's amazing! Good evening! Hello! On to CFI. Excellent. 3 for 3. Just yesterday, so it's fresh. Story? You drove 16 hours back home preparing for CFI. Ooh, ha, ooh. I am curious how that worked. Did you fly there and then just had to drive back, or did you drive out there in order to take it? 2 weeks online. Oh, and then going to a different state for it. Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so happy for you, and you're getting right into the CFI. Good on you for that. I hope that you spend some fun flights or some fun time chilling a little bit. So, but oh my gosh, that is. I'm so happy. I'm so happy it's finally done. Oh, so cool. Yes, don't have the funds to go get more ratings, but you're hoping to get your AGI for teaching ground. Hopefully this fall. Yay, that would be awesome. Or have you started already? Or do you have a timeline for when you are going to start? Because oh my gosh, it's getting there. You see the list of FOIs and you think you want to not be a pilot anymore? No. It is once. Okay, so I will say, I don't know about you, but I am more of a learner than a teacher. So getting into the teachy brain has been a little bit of a struggle, and like just like getting over like the first like hurdle of it has been it's very much a just keeping pushing yourself forward and just doing the stuff, even if it's not quite there yet. So yeah, but I'm getting back into reading the instructor's handbook, the aviation instructor's handbook. I've started watching the Todd Shellnut videos for fundamentals of instruction, and then yeah, working on lesson plans and flying in the right seat. So it'll be good. It is. It's a lot, but get the PTS, and just follow that as well. Yes. Anyway, but also just listen to your instructor. You'll get AGI if your pass rate is good enough for your student for Gold Seal. Nice. I do. I just want to get that one as well, just because, again, I feel like I'm way better at ground stuff than I am at practical stuff. So that seems like just such a good thing to have, and even just to have for us as pilots, because then it makes you better to know stuff better. So yeah, the TG brain, I like it. I mean, it is though, because you can as you're working through it, you start going through the concepts. And you're like, okay, so I understand this concept, so I'm going to start talking about it. I understand it a lot less than I think I do, or I understand it not quite the way I'm supposed to, or that's not quite right, so now I have to do it over here. And then, like, yeah, you can have it in your brain even, and it just doesn't come out right. So, yeah, it is. It's definitely a learner brain versus teacher brain. You got to be so much more detailed. And have so many different avenues of understanding rather than just like the one. So yeah, it is. It's different. The FOIs might be the death of you, but you got 2 weeks of prep before you start CFI virtual training. Nice. So you're going to be grinding the FOIs and then also trying to create lesson plans. Sounds good. Do you have okay. Well, I'd say, do you have instructor oversight as well? But I can also throw you some stuff that my instructor gave to me to be helpful. If you can teach a pilot and a third grader that topic, then I believe you understand it. Yeah, but you would be surprised. Yes, you do, and you'll take any free stuff. Okay, well, so the Aviation Instructor's Handbook, the Todd Shellnut FOI videos, and then the BINS lesson plans. What my instructor said is they're like halfway between a lesson plan and like a study guide. So they're not actually great for lesson plans, but they are good for like to kind of guide you in that way, as well as provide some information, and then you do kind of the rest of it yourself, if that makes sense. But no, there have been so many times I'm like going through it and going through a concept, and then I start trying to explain it, and then I'm like, yeah, but what about this? Okay, so this, but then what about this? Okay, so this, but that doesn't make sense, and that doesn't quite make sense. So it is. It's one of those, you learn it enough that you can do the things you're supposed to do, but then once you actually think about it some more, it might not be quite what you thought before, or it might be just a little bit more complex than you had previously thought. And I also just generally overthink things and go way into the weeds, so that could just be my experience as well. Whiteboards. I found I enjoy whiteboards, so if that helps at all, whiteboards are fun and helpful and erasable, so that is good when you're trying to adjust things frequently. So, yeah. Got the written down. Def will work on it tomorrow night. Oh, you got the written down. Okay, sounds good. Def will work on it tomorrow. Been up since 3 a.m. yesterday. Drove all day today and just now getting on your computer because I responded. Yes, I had to give out the news. Oh, that's excellent. And you'll take everything. Okay, I will post it in my Discord. You're on there. I know that. I will throw it out there. Oh, if there's anybody else who is interested. But yes, I will post the stuff. Again, always listen to your own instructor. But these things have been good for, yeah. So it's basically the things that I have now are PTS, follow that, Aviation Instructor's Handbook, Todd Shellnut videos, and BINS lesson plans to mold my own. So yeah, I'll try and throw those up there. And yeah, I have congratulations. That's so great. And it is definitely, I want to say, please give yourself like a little bit of fun downtime, because the grind is real. It is. It feels like it's never ending at this point, because it's like when you're not trying to fly right seat and present lesson plans, you're writing lesson plans. So fine, you'll give yourself tomorrow off. Okay, sounds good. Is that fine or need more? Honestly, I feel like I took quite a week or two off even, and it wasn't quite enough. But it could just be me. But yeah, definitely it is a grind, but definitely worth it. Just want to make sure that you're more prepared than most students, which is fair. I absolutely understand that as well. That's definitely me. Most don't get this much time, so okay, sounds good. Well, and I guess maybe it would have been good for me. I took the downtime. I probably should have put a little bit of the downtime to the prep. So maybe that is the better scenario. So yeah. Have a little bit of fun, and then definitely get to the prep, and then you'll be good. Rather be ahead than behind. Same, because if you're behind, you might be screwed. Fair. Yeah, sure. That sounds about right. Get the prep in, get some fun in, get the prep in as well, and you will be just fine. It'll be good. Yay. That's awesome. Well, and I guess I'll throw out there, I was gonna say, I was supposed to go fly. I was planning, because I've been just doing the grinding. I have been doing the lesson plans and the learning of stuff, and the trying to doing flying lessons to get comfortable in the right seat, and to because to be able to at some point solo right seat. Haven't gotten there yet. Still kind of a little bit and I was supposed to go do that. I was going to go fly out of my home airport in my home airplane, potentially in the right seat, and go update GPS and take care of some things, go up to my instrument flight school and take care of some stuff there, and then practice some, again, right seat, potentially pattern work over at somewhere else, get some cross country time in, some solo time in, and just in general, just some time. And I get over there, and it was great. It was so nice to be back. It's like coming home. And I'm chatting with the owner, and we were talking about how the planes at where I'm at now, they get maintenance over there as well. And there's been just so many electrical issues with all of these different planes. And the owner is like, just give me something else. I'm so tired of the electrical things. Give me something else. So he was lamenting that. And so then he went off, and I continued doing my stuff, filled up the plane, got it ready, got in, got it started, did the things, taxied, started my run up, so excited, look over at the ammeter, and it's not charging. It's way in the negative. I have not seen that. Not before, but definitely not normal. So I'm like, oh no. I start turning stuff off to see if that makes a difference. Oh, and he put on a new landing light, or a new taxi light, an LED. So now it hopefully will not pop the circuit breaker with the landing light. So I was going to go test that. And yeah. So I did. I was shutting the stuff off. I rocked the alternator button switch a couple of times. It wasn't working. Taxi back in. I go up to the hangar. I shut it off. The owner, he's coming. And I look out and I say, she's not charging. And he's like, are you effing kidding me? Except he didn't say effing. It was. I was like, as I was taxiing back, I was like, oh no, he is not going to be happy. And I did. I was like, I don't know. I did the thing. I did the run up. I checked the things, and he goes right to starting to fix it and taking the cover off, taking the cowling off. And I was like, you don't want to check it in case it was just a me problem? He's like, nah. And he goes, changes the voltage regulator, gets that on, goes in, tests it, and I can see him shaking his head in the cockpit. I'm like, oh no. He comes out and he's like, yeah, it's not working. Not going to be able to get it done today, so guess you can't go fly. I was like, no. I was finally getting back in my home airplane. I wasn't able to. But I was able to go over to the neighbors. He has lent me some missionary pilot books. And I finally finished reading those, got to go chat with him and his wife, and return the books. And so now, yeah, just got to figure out a new time to get back to home airport because are you kidding me? Oh, okay. I just want to thank you for everything, though. Oh, you're welcome. I'm an amazing. I am no teacher. I'm no teacher. Nope. I am a study buddy. Yes, and streamer. Thank you. So glad you found me. I hope I continue streaming and flying. I will. I'm having such a great time. Believe I'm going to do great. Thank you. You too. Absolutely. Have the confidence and the drive to do it. I hope so. So excited to see where you go. So excited to see where you go. And yes, thanks for the videos and post streams I make. Yes, absolutely. I am. I'm so glad that it is. Like, this started just kind of like... I started with the reading, and then once I got into the flying stuff, it was like, oh, it would be fun to, I guess, yeah, share my journey. And it has just gone beyond what I ever imagined. And I'm happy that it's helping other people too. So thank you. Thank you for saying that. And how's flying right seat though? Okay. It is different. And rib ammeter, I know. Oh my god. Oh, it just was. It was because you know when you're pre-flighting, you're like doing the check, and then something actually doesn't check. And then it's the thing. It's the same thing. And you do your troubleshooting. And it's, oh, I did. I like slightly giggled to myself, like taxing back in, like, oh, he is. The fact that he said that he was just so sick of the electrical stuff. And then another one. Oh, and the other thing I forgot. It had just gotten its 100 hour and had been tested quite a few times already. And then, of course, it's when I get in it. So, yeah. But it is. It at first, okay. It does. It seems like it shouldn't be different, right? But it is. But then it's not too bad, but it really is getting that muscle memory down. And I think one of the things, when you start flying from the left seat, you don't have any opposite tendencies to work against, right? So like if you like try to do a go around, say, you don't have that. So okay, so you got your yoke in your left hand and your throttle in the right hand, right? So what are you going to do on a go around? You're going to push your right hand in and gently bring back your left hand, right? So what are you going to do when you're so used to doing that when you're starting on the right seat? You're going to push your right hand in and pull your left hand back on the throttle. So you're pushing the yoke in and bringing the throttle back instead of what you should be doing. You know what I mean? But that's the main issue. It's like, it's just rebuilding that muscle memory with just that little extra hiccup that you're kind of used to. You're used to the opposite. And you start reaching for things over here, and it's like, no, it's got to be over here. And you're so used to having your left hand here that you start doing this thing again, and then your instructor starts slapping your arm to take your left hand off. Yeah. Sight picture is different as well. That's it. Yeah, it is. It's just, you're relearning it all over again with that other hand. So it's like having that, what's the word? Like that really acute, sense with like your hand on the yoke. You have that now in the left hand, but like the right hand doesn't quite know it yet. So you know how to do all the stuff, but your hand just doesn't quite have it down yet, if that makes sense. So you bought a yoke now so that you're home for a month. You can put the yoke on. You're right and fly with everything reversed. It is. I've been doing that as well. But just make sure you aren't learning bad habits with it, because it is still different. It is still different from real life, but it is to like get your mindset into hand is here, quadrant is here. So doing the simming, I find myself, you pop yourself in the right seat, I find myself leaning to the left, trying to get that left sight picture. So you got to make sure you keep yourself where you're supposed to be for that proper sight picture. So yeah, and so you can get an understanding. Nice. And you have almost 1 month of training that way. Okay, sounds good. Nice. It will. It will help. But yeah, just make sure. I don't know. I try and keep a distinction between like the real life and the sim stuff, just because. Yes, like it is. There are differences that'll sneak up on you. But yeah, I guess those that's my stuff. No, it won't be a 1-to-1, but it's better than nothing. Absolutely, because it is. I still find myself, I'll be going like this, and I'll reach over, and I'm like, nope, that's not what it is. Although, that bit might actually be a little bit easier. Like, you remember your stuff is over here. Oh, some of these things, like, I'll reach for the flaps, and I'll almost grab the mixture. So be careful of that. But yeah, it is. And I guess seeing the instruments as well is interesting. Yeah. It is. It's not outwardly like right off the bat difficult, but it really does take time to really get used to. I'm still not fully used to it. But it's not super hard to do, but it takes a lot of time to like get as good as you are with the left hand with everything else. But then again, that could just be me, because again, I'm less with the practical, more with the book stuff. You hate your left hand, so you don't know how it's going to operate the real cockpit. Wait, what do you mean? Well, so and I guess it does. It depends on like how the one that you're flying in is set up, because yeah, some of them are like end up being different. Like the throttle's here, the mixer's here, flaps are here, but then sometimes they're like spaced in such a way, and yeah, not left-handed, so you feel like it's going to be a pain struggle in flight. Okay, I mean I'm not left-handed either. So because you mean with like the throttle and stuff? Maybe. So what I end up doing is I become really aware that I'm trying to do things and my hands want to do the different things, especially in like the pattern, and I'll end up telling my instructor like my brain is getting confused or my hands are getting confused. I'm sure he's on the rudders and all the things, but it does. It like that makes me a little bit concerned when I can feel my brain getting confused like that. But it does. It'll just take some time. And yeah. So again, not outwardly hard, but just take some time. But it will. It'll be good. It'll be good. Excellent. And I will compile the things that I have and that I have been given. And yeah, again, congrats. That's so awesome. I do. I love it when other people succeed. Makes me so happy. Not that I expected you wouldn't. I expected you would, but it is. It's nice to hear. I'm so happy. And we will. We'll call it there. Oh gosh. I have to do stuff. It's gonna be a long weekend. Like, I'm looking forward to Monday, but also not looking forward to Monday. I need to start doing better with my time. But yes, well, it'll be good. And yeah, I was already tired before this, so I apologize for my lack of ability to form coherent thoughts and sentences. So what do I do, like, when I don't stream, if I can even say it? I study and I fly. That's what I do at this point. And that's all I'll say I do at this point. I do. I try to keep my secrets. I mean, at some point it'll probably come out, but or things will probably come out. But for now, we'll try and keep them. But yeah, but no, it honestly is right now just the doing the lesson plans. Yeah, because it is. It's so what I gotta do now is Aviation Instructor's Handbook. Gotta finish that. I would like to read Stick and Rudder. That's less particular to CFI, but just generally I've been meaning to read it since private training, but haven't gotten around to it. So those two I gotta read. Working through the Todd Shellnut videos for FOI. And then yes, lesson planning, which is a chunk of time. And in that lesson planning, also properly learning and more thoroughly learning all the things that I need to know with that. And then, yeah, flying and trying to get that down. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, my thoughts have been making it to your head. Makes sense. Okay, sounds good. I hope so. And understandable. You're in this exact same boat. Sounds good. Excellent. Oh, I need to read Stick and Rudder on stream so you can listen. Oh, I did not think of that. We will see. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. That would, see, okay, here's my one issue. My one issue is, all right, and I'm admitting this. Sometimes when I'm reading on stream, I don't always, fully absorb what is, fully absorb what it is that I'm reading. So I might have to read it myself first, and then I could definitely do it or read it again. That could work because we would. I know. I'm sorry. Yes. Comprehend what I'm saying? Yes. Because it is. I'll just I just start doing the thing, and then all of it's like, oh, I don't quite remember what I just read, but we're continuing on. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm still trying to figure out about what we're doing on Sundays. If I can do something on Sundays. But I'd really enjoy that. And I think that it is in public domain, right? So I would be able to. Would probably be more just reading it to read and not understand. Right, exactly. But then again, like I said, if I was able to read it myself first, going over it again and being able to talk about it with people, that would be good. So yeah, read it for myself first, absorb ahead, and on stream. Yes. That sounds that I like that. I'm gonna write that down so that I remember. Ooh. Well, and I'm so sad because after I was done reading the missionary pilot books that I got lent, so that I don't have to be worried about hoarding these books that somebody lent me. I was like, okay, now I can start reading my other stuff that I would like to start reading on my own. But no, now I have to read more handbooks instead of fiction, which I need in my life, and that's why we do Sherlock. So I get like I guess almost 3 hours. Yeah, we'll just round it down to 2 hours because we did a lot of chit chat as well. About 2 hours of fiction a week is what I get. Yay. But I'm looking forward to getting to the. And at some point I am going to start doing my lesson plans. Once I get them down pretty solid, I will start trying to present them. I hope, just to kind of get a gauge from other people if they're if stuff makes sense and everything. So that might be fun as well. And just again, because doing those presentations. Hang on. Stick and rudder on stream. Perfect. So what I've found, you go through the lesson plan, each little bit, you're going through it, you're writing it out, you're doing the things, writing it out, and you figure out the way that it's all supposed to work together, and finally at the end of it, you pull it out and it's good, it's done. And then you go through it again. And you find all these things you gotta change, and it doesn't make as much sense as you thought that it did. Or it is. It's just you need to get that practice down. So once I get the proper lesson plan down, I would like to be able to practice them on stream a few times. So yeah, so that'll be that at some point. Not sure when, because I have to actually get them down. So yeah. All right. So we'll go over stuff. So again, Sundays we used to do another game, other games or just random stuff. We'll leave that for now. But Tuesday we will be flying. I'm not gonna say for sure, but maybe it might be. I might be able to I might be able to do the Principles of Flight 1 that I finished to practice it, but we'll see. Otherwise, we'll just do more IFR practice from the right seat. And this time we'll actually go on VATSIM and not forget to connect to it. Yeah. And then Thursday we'll keep going with Sherlock. And yeah, that'll be that. Yeah, that's the schedule. So to whoever got lost and found their way here or found their way back, thanks for being here. And again, congratulations. It's so great. And I will send the things. And yeah, good luck. Good luck as you move forward. And I look forward to hearing about the continued journey. And yeah. Yeah. Brain was mush beforehand, so it's even more mush now, so I apologize. But yeah. So yeah, we got lost, feather right here, feather right back. Thanks for putting up with me again. We were talking earlier where it's to anyone who is new and just stumbles across this, and I'm sitting here reading Sherlock with plain nerds in the chat, that might seem strange. How did this happen? So yeah, just a bunch of plain nerds reading Sherlock. Why not? So yeah, I appreciate you guys letting me get this in, since this is, like I said, my only fiction I get right now. And I need it. So thanks, sounds good. We'll def drop by when good things happen for sure. Sounds good. Excellent. Yay. I am happy. So yeah. So again, schedule Tuesday we'll be flying. And then yeah. Did the things, said the things. Have a great whatever it's gonna be for you. Hope to see you again soon. And until then, yeah, all the good things. So thank you so much, and bye.